Near the city walls, smoke was spreading. Someone's unknown loud voice insisted that it was all in vain. They would not achieve victory. The city was destroyed and no living soul was visible. This was the military imperialism of Draconia. It was interesting to find out what the strongest empire of this era was based on. Dragonia was able to quickly conquer other countries thanks to its invincible army of dragon riders. But something went wrong. People were standing in the middle of the street and ran into a dragon rider who was riding a horse. At that moment, the main character was looking at everything from afar. The bee was flying straight to him, but before it reached him, it fell dead. The young man, observing what was happening, decided that perhaps it was not so bad. He sat in the pen filled with dragons. The protagonist was cleaning there, collecting various trash. He could not stop thinking about how much attention the dragon riders received. After some time, he was called. The man addressed him as Brid Stallion and said that today he was fired. The latter was stunned by the words of the stranger. The main character asked again if he was really fired, and the fat man replied that he was sure. He definitely had not heard about disarmament. As soon as Bit could understand, the great empire of Draconia had already conquered all neighboring countries. It left small states alone because they were not worth attacking. The leadership decided that there was no longer a need for the military. The man explained that this was exactly why they were getting rid of all the junk. The bride recalled how he had long ago started to notice that the number of dragon trainers was beginning to decline. For him, this was not a surprise. The work of such a coach is a real challenge. Eternal dirt, risk of injuries, but the main problem is their smell. It cannot be washed off. With such a job, it is simply impossible to attract girls' attention. Everyone who left this position looked way too happy. The main character asked aloud if the man was really sure he could just leave like that. To this, the latter replied that it was undoubtedly commendable, but the soldiers were capable of taking care of themselves. In response, Brid said that caring for dragons was not such a simple matter. He explained that each of them has their own character. Some can be obedient, but most are very particular about their treatment, and that's not all. The stables for the dragons need repairs, and the health of the dragons themselves must be constantly monitored. Feeding and cleaning up after 100 dragons is quite a job. They need to be fed and given medicine. If they had no trainers left, it would be bad when he is fired. To this, the man asked why they wouldn't just kill the dragons until they can handle them. To this, the main character replied that dragons cannot just be killed and this would become a symbol of Dragonia. The man said nothing, only declared that he doesn't care, then pushed the main character away. The man asked if Brit had heard how much it costs them to keep all these dragons, and they were parasites sucking money out of them. Because of their size, they need huge stalls. Medicine for them also costs a fortune. Sometimes they die despite all efforts. After that, a person has to raise a new dragon, and that again entails expenses. If anyone knows how expensive it is to maintain dragons, it's Brid. If he can save their lives simply by freeing them, that might be the only thing he can do for them. After all, he is just an ordinary commoner. The main character said he understood everything, then took from his bag a collection of all the necessary information to care for dragons and handed it to the man. The latter slapped his palm to knock the book out of his hands. He said they wouldn't need it, because Brid is just an ordinary breeder and he has nothing to show them. The main character thought about how he had worked here for 20 years. They shouted at him but still trusted him with the work. He decided that this was how they valued him, but it turned out he was wrong. Brit realized his job could be done by someone else, anyone. The man immediately began to get angry, clenching his fists. At that moment, the man stepped on his reference book. The protagonist approached him, tugged at his leg to take back the book, and said he wanted to return it. After that, without saying goodbye, he said he would pray for their health. Dragonia, the first dragon stables. The protagonist was inside packing his things when two men in armor entered. They were laughing and asked if he had been fired. They talked about how he was basically incapable of anything, that's why he got stuck in this job. If they were in his place, they would leave here in a moment and go hang out with girls. Then the main character asked if he could really trust them in this matter. In response, they said, "Don't worry, even an old guy like him can handle it, and they will definitely succeed." Braid thought they were some rude villains who always dumped all the work on him. One of the men asked where the idea came from that dragons only need a good beating to obey. The other nodded in agreement. At that moment, one of the men approached the dragon and kicked it. The protagonist decided that dragons have tough scales and thick muscles and that this dragon seemed to have a rather calm character. Their kicks were not enough to anger it. Now he needs to take care of himself. He can find a job in a store or in the field, maybe even in some transportation work or as a cook. He thinks about trying something new, not his old job. The main character felt anger about to flare up inside him just thinking about it. At that moment, one of the men asked if everything was okay. He also asked if he really had any problems. In response, Britt looked at him angrily. This made the man angry. He said he was a bad person and asked did he really want to die. Just as the man swung his sword to strike, the dragons roared as if protecting him. The men immediately got scared and ran away. As they fled, they shouted at him, "Next time, train them better," and he tried to explain that he had been fired. After that, he returned to the dragon and thanked it for helping him out. The main character thought before leaving he should properly say goodbye to them, so he approached each dragon and petted it. He had one last dragon left. It lived in the oldest dragon's stable. It was created at the very beginning of the formation of the Dragon Rider army. This ladder leads to the one and only dragon. When he came down, there stood a huge dragon, behind bars and still chained to them with heavy chains. Its name was Barbarossa. She was the oldest dragon in Draconia. She was also the leader of all their dragons. She was very large in size. Although the throne is now out of use, people say that the heroic king who founded their empire once sat on it. Barbarossa looked carefully at the main hero. He was a little surprised because usually Barbarossa lies motionless and does not move. Suddenly, the dragoness growled. The protagonist felt as if she saw right through him. He said aloud that he came to say goodbye. The dragon seemed to understand his words. She looked at him directly without any hesitation. Britt explained he was released to cut costs. He could not believe that they treated him like that after everything he had done for them. The protagonist also asked her to look after the other dragons instead of him. He said she was so smart she would succeed. At that moment, the dragoness began shaking her head as if refusing him. To this, Britt asked if she really cared about him. At that very moment, the dragoness stared intently at him. The main hero believed that his colleagues always looked down on him. He was not popular with girls, no one ever praised the work he did, and he was sure that his efforts would never be rewarded. But seeing the dragon he cared so much about and feeling how it worried about him, he thought, it turns out it was not all in vain. He had the thought that he could no longer hold back, and he said aloud that he was about to cry. The hero turned his back to her, said he would pray for her health, and walked away. The dragoness clearly did not like these words. She began tearing the chains. The man was shocked by what she was doing. After some time, the main heroine found herself in his teeth. While this was happening, the men he was supposed to work for were walking down the street. One said he would never forgive him and the dragon he would show them. And they heard screams. At that moment, Barbarossa was destroying another wall. The protagonist asked what was happening and tried to stop her, but the dragoness seemed not to hear. She just burst out and disappeared like a whirlwind. A man was sitting on her back, holding on with all his might not to fall. The dragon freed the rest of the dragons, and they all scattered in different directions. They broke every cage so that all the dragons could be freed and leave the territory. Barbarossa and the other dragons swept away everything in their path. They knocked down walls, destroyed buildings. The main hero could only pray to God. Britt turned around and saw all the dragons had broken free from their stables. They really were going to leave with him. At that moment, they were already approaching the gates leading beyond the territory. There stood one guard. When the boy turned his head aside, he saw a flock of dragons that had torn down the state gates. The main hero was in shock. He tried to understand what was going on here. Time passed. Britt opened his eyes. The sun was shining brightly. Birds were chirping. He exhaled and thought how wonderfully he had slept. But as it turned out, his back was resting on a dragon. As soon as he opened his eyes, he saw dragons around. He was filled with surprise. Where was he at all? Then he decided to find a pond to wash and clean himself. He had already scouted the outskirts of the country, so he was somewhat familiar with the local lands, but if he had to guess, he would say it was somewhere in the north. It is cooler here at this time of year. Dragons find it hard in cold climates. The protagonist could not understand why the dragons had come here. There was only one reason. They probably decided that he was preparing to escape from the empire. Britt thought that escaping beyond the empire's territory was a good idea, but trouble with food might await here. Dragons eat a lot, several kilograms of grass and several liters of water. The grass in this region is much lower, and there are so many dragons here that it will disappear in an instant. To be honest, the places they pass through have already turned into wastelands. These dragons brought him here because they trust him. He cannot allow them to starve, so he must do something. The protagonist saw a cart rolling towards him, after which he turned back to the dragons and asked, "A little to the left." The boy set out to explore the forest. He came across the nest of a huge python. It is a giant venomous snake capable of swallowing a small dragon whole. Even a healthy dragon will have a very hard time fighting this monster. Better not to touch it. He has a minimal supply of medical supplies with him. We need to find a resting place that will be more suitable. The main character noticed something in the sky. He saw a dragon flying in the air holding a large python in its claws. Brid was wondering if it was hunting, but then immediately realized, no, it was something else. Then the dragon released the python and began looking at Brid. Almost instantly, this giant dragon landed near the main character. He even flew aside due to the shockwave from the impact. When he more or less came to his senses and sat down on the ground, he saw the dragon up close and someone was sitting on its back. The protagonist thought it was a person. That's why he had that feeling. He was just thinking, the movements of a wild dragon should be more natural, and just then the man asked him if he dodged. Fully armored, the unknown man said he would not miss again, and at that moment Bit asked why he was attacking him at all. The knight asked about the fact that he is a member of the Dragon Corps of Draconia. He does not remember them being allowed to enter this territory. The main character thought he had ruined everything. Finding himself outside the empire, he ended up on the territory of another country. Draconia warned other states about the invasion, and he brought with him 100 dragons. Brid immediately began shouting that it was just a misunderstanding. He asked to be heard. Arguing was pointless anyway. The main character decided that his opponent could easily handle a large python, so he could not die because of some misunderstanding. The boy immediately turned away and asked Barbarossa to show himself. At that very moment, that dragon emerged from the forest. Two dragons clashed in a fight. The knight froze, stunned by what was happening. The main character decided, such a flying dragon has enormous power, but it is extremely limited. Brit immediately shouted at Barbarossa to attack from the right. The knight decided that the boy was not very smart after all. Everything could be heard. He immediately turned back to his dragon and ordered caution. Strike would come from the right. But at that very moment, something went wrong. Barbarossa struck from the other side. The knight wondered if she had disobeyed his order, then realized the real order was given not by voice but by gestures. The protagonist said that Barbarossa was a good person. Everything worked according to plan. He thought this could only have happened because Barbarossa was nearby. At that moment, the knight decided he had lost. Yet Brid managed to catch him before he could get injured. He decided that it was good. If he had been wounded, it could have caused another misunderstanding. After that, the main character looked at his dragon and thought that it had been bitten by a large python. His left leg lost its color. Brid thought about how to get rid of all the poison as quickly as possible. He saw the knight's spear, grabbed it, and said he would borrow it. After that, he rushed to the dragon and began removing the poison. The dragon began to scream in pain because the protagonist had to cut the flesh, but he said everything would be fine, he would recover soon. The knight asked if he had been poisoned, and Brit explained, no matter how much all his dragon power worked, one should not be too confident. There are many things in nature that can kill even them. After that, the boy returned the spear to the knight. He thanked him. The protagonist suddenly realized this knight is trying to kill him. He began to shake with nerves. The stranger understood that Brid was worried, so he took off his helmet. Under it was a very beautiful girl. She told him not to worry because he was the one who lost. The main character, in shock, asked if his opponent was really a woman. He was completely confused. The girl said that defeating a flying dragon with the help of a ground one amazed her, and also he managed to patch up her dragon's wound, and she didn't even notice. Moreover, he returned her weapon, even though she attacked him. This means that the main character is confident in his abilities. The girl said she apologized to him for her rudeness, but being a local princess, she knew very little about this world. And then her words reached Brid. She said that she seemed to have forgotten to introduce herself. Her name was Fiona Shin Leviton. She smiled gently. The girl also said that she was the princess of the northern country Leviton. The protagonist exclaimed this name aloud. Who would have thought that the princess would hunt a large python alone without outside help, and apparently completely alone, completely reckless? She sighed and said that she would probably be scolded at home again. Fiona said that since she was a princess, she no longer had the right to resist. If the spilled blood was not enough for him, he could take her to Dragunia, only she asked not to touch her subjects. The main character understood. In his opinion, she misunderstood something again. The girl continued and said that for this, he could do whatever he wanted with her. Fiona said that she would not object, even if he decided to make her his concubine. The bride herself was surprised by her last words. The girl said that every cloud has a silver lining. She is not married, they are the same age, but she guarantees him that she has considerable endurance. Fiona began to undress and asked what he would say. Instead of killing her, she felt they could reach an agreement. The main character realized that something had to be done, so he immediately jumped to her, helped her dress again, and said that he asked her to calm down. After that, he became more serious and asked if she could listen to a story. She also became serious. When he told her everything, the girl said that everything was clear to her. He was released. When he was about to leave, the dragons followed him on their own, voluntarily. Fiona was in shock. Such an experienced dragon master was released. She could not believe it and immediately asked if Draconia was really ruled by foolish people. She apologized to him for misunderstanding him, and the protagonist replied, "No need to apologize. A princess should not bow to someone like him." At that moment, Fiona's gaze changed. She asked him what his name was. Brid told her his name. It was clear that he did not understand exactly what the question was about. The girl said with a serious expression that he must stop belittling his own merits. The main character was shaken by her words. Fiona said that he has a too unique set of skills. It turns out she was mistaken about the hero king from Draconia, who bears the title of legend. The main character said that he cannot be considered the leader of the dragons despite the current situation. It was clear that these thoughts were gnawing at him, but he still continued and said that he was an ordinary dragon trainer just taking care of them. The girl smiled indulgently. Fiona said that Leviton is a weak country that can be destroyed at any moment. She constantly thinks about how to save it. To control a flying dragon, one must train for a long time. The girl fell silent for a moment and said that, in her opinion, they were destined to meet. She stood up, then turned back to him. Fiona asked why he did not join his country to hers along with the dragons and looked at him very resolutely. The protagonist suddenly jumped to his feet and, hesitating, asked if she really wanted to hire him. She answered affirmatively and explained, with his dragons, the power of her country would grow incredibly fast. She believed that this was a very profitable deal for him. Brit did not agree with this, but there were still problems with food and housing for both the dragons and himself. Since he was silent for a long time, she decided that the answer was negative. But the guy said that he accepted her offer. There are a whole 100 dragons here. Does she understand what that means? To this, Fiona replied that they would provide them with all the necessary food and shelter. The main character changed in the Lyceum and said that he was not talking about that. The man sharply turned to her with a very tense face and said that she simply cannot imagine how dragons stink. From the outside it is not noticeable, but inside their excrement emits the most terrible stench. Could Leviton really shelter them? If not, then while the necessary conditions are being built, the whole country will have time to be stunk out by this smell. He explained that this should not be taken lightly. Just then Fiona approached him. She sniffed him and said that he had such a strong smell that her head even spun a little. At the same time, the girl said that she could not say that she did not like this smell. For a princess, such a smell is not a problem. After this, Fiona said that she needed a main character, and then she reached out her hand to him. He decided that he should be grateful to her. Then he remembered the words of others, supposedly be grateful that you have at least some job, but he just sits on the salary, stinks, and he shouldn't go outside. As a dragon trainer, he was called a burden until the very end. He was never allowed to feel that he was someone important. He began to believe that this would last until the very end. The main hero decided that this was the first time he heard such words about his necessity. For the last 20 years, he stubbornly got used to believing in his own worthlessness. Brid decided that he wanted to be useful to the princess. Emotions overwhelmed him and he began to cry bitterly, tightly clutching his clothes. At that moment, his dragons jumped up to him and began to cheer him up. Fiona said that if he needed anything else, he should say so, and then asked if he had any questions. To this, the main hero answered sharply no. After that, he said that his name was Brid. The horse stableman swore to serve her faithfully and honestly, and at the same time fell to his knees before her. After some time, they reached a new state. The girl said that they were right here. The main heroine looked around and realized this was the very view of Leviton. Then he saw the castle. Fiona asked what it looked like. After all, it still seemed so small. She also told him not to be shy and allowed him to look closer. The castle walls had long since turned into ruins. They built a temporary bridge. The majority of the houses had long been in decline anyway. Most of the male population died in the war, so only the old, women, and children remained here. The protagonist chose words about the war, and the princess explained that in childhood they were attacked by Dragunia. She was lucky to survive. But in that battle, her relatives died and the country plunged into chaos. But they survived, so now she has only one duty: to rule this country and protect it at any cost. And then she turned to the protagonist and asked if it was okay that they left his dragons behind. He replied, he told them he would return a little later, so everything is fine. Fiona said she understood that one could call dragons with a whistle, but controlling them from a distance was simply impossible. His ability to tame dragons was exactly what he was struck by in the comforting words. After some time, the girl reported that they were landing. The residents saw her and joyfully began shouting that she had returned. It was obvious they loved her. They began greeting her. The princess thanked them and said that she had brought them many souvenirs. She looked at this and immediately decided that she was truly a big shot. At that moment, people began asking who her companion was. Brid said he forgot to introduce himself, then gave his name. Fiona declared that she personally recruited him to her service. He is an incredible dragon master. The residents heard her words. The princess told them that they needed to prepare for the arrival of thousands and thousands of dragons. When the main character looked up, he saw that people were looking at him very cautiously. He became a little scared, and after that, he was barely patted on the shoulder. Fiona told them not to worry, was sure he would definitely help them in the country. After that, she ordered them to return to work and promised to show this boy the way to the dragon stables. A little later, when they had moved a certain distance away from the people, the main character said that it seemed to him they were not happy to see him. Fiona said that because of their remoteness, the country was literally cut off from the whole world, so they were wary because he was a stranger. But as soon as they saw what he was capable of, they changed their minds. The heroine thought that her words carried weight and he could prove people's opinions only through actions. Perhaps he was too naive. The girl said that he lacked the courage to have such skills. If he were so indecisive, he would not be taken seriously. After that, Fiona suggested that he speak to her as if he were talking to a friend. The protagonist replied that he didn't even know how. The girl asked what was wrong with him, then said, he can't hold back. Then she smiled gently and said that he should know she is quite fiery. At that moment, the bride thought that her eyes were something special. Then he gathered his thoughts and said that he understood everything, so he would try to discard unnecessary formalities. The girl said that he was a good guy. The protagonist said that he was still against it and called her Princess Fiona, to which she replied, I forgive you today, but you have to be ready. The girl said that before he could even blink, he would stop communicating with her so formally. After that, they simply parted ways. At that moment, the hero seemed to feel something. He turned around but saw nothing. Later, they reached the dragon stables and Fiona called Minnie. The girl said that it was strange. Usually she could be found somewhere nearby. Then Briduchka asked if Minnie was the local dragon master. Princess Fiona said that she was an incredible girl. She was so attached to him, like a puppy, so sweet. The heroes thought that contrary to popular belief, there were many women among the dragon riders. It was much easier for dragons to approach them, so there was nothing strange about it. Fiona did not understand where the girl had gone, but it did not matter. She would return anyway sooner or later, so they could just wait. Brit agreed and said that she was probably just busy. The protagonist told her not to worry, he just needed to introduce himself to her. There was nothing complicated about it. At the same time, a faint smile flickered on his face. Fiona looked at him, then closed her eyes and said that everything was fine, and then she started counting on him. The main character replayed the princess's words in his head about how she needed him specifically. That's why he came here. No words will help here. The most important thing now is to earn recognition from the locals through his actions. At that moment, Fiona sneaked up behind him and whispered that she was simply bursting with passion for guys who do their job well, and then he wished him luck. Bride's heart almost stopped. The protagonist decided that he was interested in what Minnie was like. He had already told the princess, communicating with people was his weak spot. She got a little better, but she was still a crazy troublemaker, uncontrollably controlling dragons and leaving a complete mess behind her. He was grateful for the work she gave him and for valuing his taming skills. She even beat him because he spent time with another girl. He simply cannot stop worrying. At that moment, he felt something and was suddenly attacked. The girl said that the older sister was so cruel, she keeps her but still looks for workers. Brid decided that she was Manny, but at that moment the stranger said that he had nothing to do here. If he valued his life, he should get out of here. The protagonist said he couldn't do that because Miss Fiona hired him as a dragon master, so he would make her befriend him. The girl sat on a chair and ordered him to leave. These dragon styles belonged to her. There really were many of them. She said she heard that he was a skilled dragon handler. They say he tamed 100 dragons at once. The main theory is this: one dragon master can tame only one dragon. So is he really trying to say that he managed to tame 100? Who would have thought he would dare to deceive the princess like that? The main character tried to give him a chance to listen, but she threw the villa at him and said she was repeating again. He needed to get out of here. Bride left the place with the stables and again ran through in his head that he would be released soon. He tried again and again to offer her help, but she each time burst out with sharp words and refused. It was really bad. The main heroes decided the dragons are already heading here to this forest. At this pace, they will be here soon. At that moment, Minnie went to look after her dragons. She began to say to leave her alone as if she could be trusted, the dragon master. While she was lost in thought, the door opened. It was the main heroine who called her. The girls flinched from surprise and screamed. She got angry and said that he was a bad person. To this, Brid replied that she misunderstood everything. He did not intend to go inside, he just wanted to ask. The main heroine asked if she minded if he used this free territory where there was nothing. To this, the girl turned away and said she had no idea what he had invented there, but this territory was not her responsibility, so he could do whatever he wanted with it. Briggs said that was great permission granted. That is, no one would object if he carried out her orders and proved that he was needed by her. They were just about to appear. Many found it funny, saying she would believe that dragons would obey his orders and come to him at the appointed place. She heard no sounds and the ground did not shake. The girl said that if 100 dragons were approaching here, they would definitely notice it, and the main hero replied that he asked them not to make unnecessary noise. At that moment, Minnie heard something. She sharply turned around and saw the head of a huge dragon peeking out from behind the house. After this, she saw others besides this dragon. They all moved together, very organized. The protagonists told them that they were on time. Well done, they really got here without making unnecessary noise. Many wondered if he was lying. She looked at the dragons and wondered if they could always move so quietly. The appearance of one dragon could already make the ground tremble, not to mention their roar. After this, she looked at the boy and wondered if he really achieved such a result on his own. This thought angered her. She ran up to him and grabbed him by the collar. Many said that he really did not lie about his skills, but this only meant one thing: he achieved everything through some kind of harsh training. She would never trust the dragon master. The main heroine was stunned by her words. He immediately understood the reason for her distrust. The girl said that he would still shake everything out of her mouth and definitely expose him. When she was little, she was fascinated by the story of the dragon masters. Other children called her strange. Watching how the masters interacted with dragons as if with close friends, she could not contain her admiration for them. But she was wrong. She understood that the main hero was a very experienced dragon master because he could control them even from afar. But as the girl already said, he had to put them through the toughest training. All the dragons watched them closely. Minnie also said that she was more than sure he treated them in the most terrible way. The protagonist was stunned by her words. He began to beg her to wait because she misunderstood everything. At that moment, a small dragon appeared in the stable and immediately disappeared. Brid noticed this and wondered if he really had so many scars. Many immediately rushed to him, calling Kaiosuk. The protagonist thought that this was probably the name of that dragon. It was then that the girl apologized to him and said that she scared him, after which she asked him to come back. Kaiosuk opened his eyes wide and looked around as if everything around him had enchanted him. Brett noticed this. Many said, no matter what happens, she still doesn't believe him, so he should remember that. She turned over her shoulder and told him that if he even touched her dragon with a finger, she would kill him instantly. The protagonist remembered how the little girl scared him. He also remembered how strange he was. Then he stopped at the thought of how he would now explain himself to Lady Fiona. At that moment, a second woman appeared behind him, and then she asked if he was talking about her. Brid did not expect this and screamed in fear. The girl said she had taken care of her affairs, so she decided to visit him. It seemed that things with Minnie were not going smoothly for him. The protagonist told her what had happened. Fiona said, who would have thought that a man who tamed 100 dragons would have trouble with a human girl? He replied, with her, it is really harder than with dragons. The princess asked if he had already met Kaiosuk. The protagonist pronounced the name aloud and realized this was the very same dragon. He asked what had happened to him, and Fiona explained, he is the first dragon that Minnie ever carried on herself. Since carrying a child was new to her, she overdid it and was sick for 3 days. While she was ill, another dragon mistress looked after the dragons. When she recovered, a terrible sight appeared before her eyes. When she entered the dragon stable, she saw her dragon covered in huge wounds and even chained. The man said that he simply would not stop growling, so he had to be taught a good lesson. He told her not to worry, he just fainted from a too strong blow. Then he sneaked closer and asked what she thought about a little date because he could already watch him. The man even said that it would be good to repay the debt, but he didn't finish speaking. Many had enough strength to hit him with all their might. After that, she ran up to her dragon and said that if she had known how all this would end, she would never have allowed anyone else to take care of him. Bound in an unnatural pose without food and water and continuously beaten, the dragon ended up in a terrible condition. At that moment, many realized the dragon masters whom she had cherished for so long were nothing like those described in her childhood books. Since then, she stopped believing in them. She asked him to forgive that girl if he noticed that her behavior was rude, to which he said he was very pleased, but he was not talking about that. The protagonist said that he had already guessed she hates him because of the smell. Fiona just laughed loudly at his words. Then the girl started laughing even louder, and after that said that she definitely did not expect to hear that from him. Bree anxiously asked what happened since he had never been successful with girls. Fiona explained that many fiercely hate the dragon masters and that if he wanted, she could help. But as soon as she didn't even manage to finish speaking, this man refused. The main character said that he would manage on his own because she trusted him with that. Briggs said that even the princess herself believes in him, so dealing with Minnie is a piece of cake for him. The girl was surprised by his words, and later the boy was already there next to the other dragons. The protagonist said that they need to show what the dragon masters are capable of. He looked extremely determined. Night covered everything. The moon had already risen in the sky. Many opened their eyes and jerked sharply as soon as they realized they had fallen asleep. After that, she turned around and saw the dragon was not nearby. He was standing by the stable gate, intently watching something. She immediately asked what was happening there. Looking back, she saw the main character covered in mud who was addressing his dragons and ordering them to start work. The girl saw how the dragons were dragging pieces of wood and logs, helping to build the house. It seemed incredible. Could they really have built all this in just a couple of days? It was obvious that all 100 dragons were working nonstop. She thought, usually for dragons to act so harmoniously together, a whole bunch of people would be needed, but that guy was doing everything alone as if they had become one whole. These thoughts made Minnie sad. She saw how coordinated and disciplined they were. It seemed these dragons did not hate him. In fact, they trusted him completely. Then she noticed that her dragon was gone. She tried to call him by name, then wanted to ask him to come back, but the main character put his hand on her shoulder and blocked the way. She asked him to step aside. The girl said that Kyosuke is afraid of other creatures and not just people. He is even afraid of dragons without her. If suddenly he is attacked by other dragons, he is completely helpless. The heroine did not have time to finish speaking, decisively stopped her and ordered to just watch, and many obeyed. The girl saw that her dragon was calmly communicating with other dragons, and at the same time he felt no discomfort. Moreover, they treated him well. Breed said that dragons raised by human hands usually tend to avoid contact with other dragons, but sometimes they need to be given a chance, otherwise they will never mature and develop further. The girl decided that she had already seen these signs. She noticed how he was looking at other dragons from afar. She saw this and understood something was wrong here. Henry was caught off guard. Could it be that she had truly kept him locked up all this time? The main character said that Kyosuke is an incredible dragon, but when you lose faith in people, dragons usually stop communicating. To which she replied that he constantly tries to climb out of his shell and look her straight in the eyes, albeit in his awkward style. She looked at her and she said that Kyosuke grew up to be a very sincere dragon, all thanks to many. The same one cried for a very, very long time. The man reached out his hand to her to physically support her, but realized there was no need, after which he turned back to his dragons and said that they were finishing for today. The girl looked ahead and saw the main hero smiling. The dragons loved him immensely. They licked him from head to toe. Many believed that she could not compare to him. These thoughts clearly weighed on her. Later, the main heroine reported, the new stables for the dragons are ready. The man turned to the dragon and said that it was excellent work, that they did well. He would handle the rest himself so they could just relax. Everyone was happy with the news. The main hero was confident. Such a large table could accommodate 100 dragons. He needed to prepare all the necessary tools. When he started hammering nails, he thought about where there was a lot now. Brid was a bit tense. He felt that he was being stubborn with Kyosuke, but he hoped the girl was not angry with him, and at that moment he missed and hit his own hand with the hammer, so he screamed. Right behind him, he heard a voice. It was unknown where they had sneaked in from many, and she said to him in an indifferent tone that he was such a vulnerable rag, but at that moment she was holding a box with tools and flashlights. He was outraged by her words. The hero asked where she was from. She replied that she just brought him everything he needed. It was clear the girl was quietly trying to make contact. Brid was impressed by her act. Without turning around, she said that he did not need to make tools from scratch. If he needed anything, he should just tell her. It was obvious that Minnie found it hard to speak, but she said he could drop by her dragon stable from time to time. Bree interrupted the conversation, asking if that meant she had accepted him, and the girl blushed. She began to explain in such a way that he would not confuse anything. She said she was helping only because he was at least a little useful. She just did not want to create problems for her older sister. At that moment, the boy squeezed her hands in his. The main character said that he was very grateful to her, and she asked in surprise what he was saying and why he suddenly grabbed her hand. They both blushed. After that, Brit pulled away from her, stared, and apologized, saying that the gloves probably still smelled, and besides, all this work made him sweat, so it was no wonder she felt uncomfortable. Minnie sighed and said he was not very smart because he was very mistaken. The young man was twisted by her words, and the girl immediately laughed sweetly. When the main character looked at her, he saw that she was smiling at him very warmly. She said that he was strange. Later in Dragunia, captain of the Dragon Knights, Sarah Valiadin, knelt on one knee and said she was reporting the gathered information. She explained that almost all the dragons had escaped from the dragon stables and ordered to organize a patrol to search for them. It was visible that the castle walls were destroyed and people were inspecting them. Rulers sat on the throne before her. The girl explained that they are now planning to buy new dragons. She personally selected several agents in the trading city of Hedda, but due to the number of dragons, she was immediately interrupted. The ruler said that she had greatly disappointed him. He asked if that was all Sarah was capable of. The girl standing nearby was happy just from his words. The man said that because of her merits on the battlefield and also because he refused to take her as a concubine, allowed her to serve as a general in their army. But in the end, he concluded, women are incapable of anything. She is a former general of the country destroyed by Draconia, and after the defeat, her people were taken captive, so she had no choice but to swear allegiance to Bombard. That man said he did not need her dragons, and this greatly surprised Sarah. He asked if she had hearing problems. After that, he declared that now instead of dragons, they would use animals. Keeping dragons is too expensive. It is a huge burden on the country's resources. But with animals, it's the opposite. There are many of them. They definitely won't run away, so we need to catch exactly these animals. Then Bombard laughed, waved his hand, and said that, after all, he was very smart. It was clear how proud he was of himself and his decisions. Sarah left the room and pondered, wild predatory animals will never obey people. Even trained dragons need time to get used to people, and the very idea of taming animals is complete nonsense. In fact, dragons are creatures just like other beasts. This is a great opportunity to test her skills, but a person still has no right to speak, and regardless of everything, she must obey his orders. If only Brid were here, he knows how to control dragons as if they were extensions of his own arms and legs. He could destroy this castle all by himself. But the main character had long since left here. Sarah became sad and thought that he had not even come to visit her. In Leviton, Brit was just cleaning and yawning widely when many people called him. She invited him to come over and promised to show him the city. The main heroine froze and stared at her with shock, scanning her from head to toe. He asked if they knew each other, and the girl replied, she will definitely hit him right now. The man explained that she just looks completely different than usual. She replied that she always dresses like that on her day off. The heroine said that it suits her very well. Many thought to themselves, honestly, she had never dressed like this before. She hoped she did not look too strange. Brit asked why she had suggested a walk to him. She explained he had been working in the stables nonstop, so she decided he needed a day off. The man was stunned by her words. The main heroine asked him what a day off is. The girl did not expect such a question from him. After that, she said it was a neglected case. She told him to change clothes. Sister Fiona firmly said that he needed a break from work. Bride replied that he understood, after which he asked not to be pressured. She also reminded him, don't forget to brush your teeth. After some time, they set off to the city riding a dragon. He said that in Draconia he was forced to be constantly at work, but now he can return home, so honestly, he doesn't really need a rest. Many told him to calm down. City was already visible. She explained that only old people and children live here, quite a lively place. At that moment, the main character stood and nodded, shaking his head to take everything in. The girl said that he was already an adult, so he should stop looking around like he was very unintelligent. She was considered his boss, so he should not humiliate her. The man scratched the back of his head and apologized to her. The main character explained that he simply had never wandered the city like that, so it was unusual for him. At that moment, a pleasant aroma reached the girl's nose. It came from the nearest shop. Bride thought he could never relax. He was afraid of causing trouble for his boss. At that moment, food was forcibly shoved into his mouth. He said it was hot and asked what was happening. She ordered him to eat. When he ate what was in his mouth, he exclaimed that it was incredibly tasty. Many explained it was the meat of a spiny lizard, but he insisted that it was so juicy just touching the tongue, it seemed to melt in the mouth. Spiny lizards are essentially miniature versions of dragons. They are extremely aggressive creatures that often attack people. He became curious whether everything was really so good in their country if they could afford to eat spiny lizards every day. Apparently, hunting animals was one of the local traditions. The main heroine thanked her, then said that if this is a reward for his work, he wants to work there forever. The girl laughed and asked if he doesn't want to visit one more place. After some time, many took him to the market. There were lots of people selling various food and you could eat yourself. The girl asked his opinion and said that their market was a true pride. Bride said that this place looks even livelier than the rest of the city. She explained, today they were lucky with a big catch, so there were more people than usual. Many said that she was talking about the python that her older sister Fiona had already caught. She was sure parts of its body were already being sold somewhere. The protagonist thought that he expected nothing else from her. Since so many people had said this, he could truly see there were traders from other countries here. The girl explained that the old man had some extraterrestrial skills and then added that the gloves on her hands were his work. Briggs said that it was really excellent work. He took her hand and said that if the materials were unreliable, they would have long since come apart at the seams. He immediately saw this man hates shoddy work. Such quality products are a real rarity. Then they saw the python below. The protagonist asked if it was the same big python. It was bigger than the one he had seen before. Many explained, because of its size, they had a hard time. Old people could not handle it. The man decided to go down. People noticed him and heard in response. He did not promise anything in advance, but if he could help, would they mind? To this, they replied that they were actually waiting for help from young guys. One of the men reached out and twisted his back. He was immediately ordered to pull the skin with all his strength. He immediately began doing these actions. The crowd started talking that it takes 5 people for this, and this young man was clearly very strong. The men talked about how impressive this was. A girl approached him and also said that it was incredible, and he replied that he was glad he did not tear his skin. Many did not understand his words, and the protagonist replied, if he had torn it, all efforts would have been in vain. One mistake and the entire value of this product would have been lost. The girl asked him not to fool around because a person cannot tear the skin off a large python, and when she looked closer, she was extremely surprised. As it turned out, he almost tore it. She thought about how strong he was. Apparently, he took this from daily care of dragons, so she decided that he must have a limit. The girl recalled the dragons he had worked with. Maybe he could even compete with dragons in strength. The boy stood still and was glad that he got a piece of wonderful skin. Her thoughts were still deep. At that moment, the men ran up to them and thanked him again for the help. He really pulled them out of trouble. They explained that without him, they wouldn't have been able to handle her. They started insisting that he was all dirty, that he had stained his clothes because of them. For them, this was a normal thing, and they didn't want to waste water, because in their country there is no single normal water source. The main character realized in this country there are no large rivers, so water has to be drawn from wells. But the main problem is that wells are very hard to maintain for elderly people and children. The man immediately imagined, as soon as a river appears in the city, he will go there to swim together with Fiona. She will say how soaked she is and then ask how he plans to make amends. At that moment, Minnie snapped him out of his thoughts and asked what the hell he was doing, and at the same second she hit him in the face. The boy replied that nothing of the sort was happening. Then she also joined the conversation about the river and said that it wouldn't harm them. It wouldn't harm her either to swim, and to that, Brid replied that he could build a river here, because he loves swimsuits so much. People immediately jumped on him and bombarded him with questions, whether he could really build a river here. It was impressive. No wonder Mrs. Fiona trusted him. They started asking if they would really have their own river. Everyone started talking about how this young man would bring them a river, but it was unclear exactly how he would do it since there was no river nearby. People insisted that one shouldn't be rude, and this man was brought by Mrs. Fiona herself. The protagonist understood he couldn't tell them the truth. He couldn't allow them to find out that he had burned it randomly because of his own fantasies. People began to thank him. He realized he simply had no other way out. The protagonist imagined the townspeople carelessly splashing in the water. He asked Fiona if it was true that many had gone shopping. The girl replied yes and explained. Only the two of them remained. The man shifted his gaze to her. They both blushed and the distance between their faces suddenly began to shrink. At that moment, the hero woke up and realized he was kissing one of the dragons. He sharply sat up in bed, and the dragon immediately tried to bite him on the head. When he reached the shops, he fell to his knees before many. He said that yesterday he spoke as if he could bring a river here and apologized, admitting that he blurted it out without thinking. The girl said that was bad, although she herself was good because she immediately believed his words. She asked what he was thinking about. The boy thought about Fiona but did not say a word about it. Many said, unfortunately for him, this country is quite small. Rumors spread quickly. She is sure that his words reached the palace. He understood. If he confesses everything, he will be considered a fraud. Most likely, he will be forced to leave the place he had searched for so long. That is still the best option. And in the worst case, he and the dragons will simply be torn apart. The main character firmly said that he must go in search of the water source. At that moment, both he and the girl were extremely serious. Later, they entered the forest. She said he was very vulnerable. Was he afraid that people would talk about him because of the lie? He replied that he did not want Fiona's and Minnie's reputations to suffer because of him. The girl said she would not care. Then he interrupted her and said that maybe it would be better for her to stay in the city. She replied that he was not very smart. The forest was full of dangers. How could she let him go alone? She also asked how he planned to find the water source. The main character answered that he would ask him for advice and only then finally climbed up the rock. Up there near the well sat a dark blue water dragon named Undine. Brid greeted him. This is a water dragon, as the name suggests. He lives mostly in water. On land he is quite slow, but in water he quickly and easily catches prey. Among female soldiers he is very popular, kind and obedient in training. Many were shocked by this, and the main character explained, water dragons have a special ability to find the water source. They literally smell water from kilometers away. The girl asked in surprise if it was really possible to do that in the forest where there are so many other smells around. He explained that it reacts only to the smell of water because they love it very much. With his help, they will quickly find the water source. Many said that the forest was gigantic. To this, the boy replied that she was right. The forest stretches for several thousand kilometers, but they could only hope that he would be able to find at least something in this thicket. Still, Undine would spend too much time searching, and he did not want to waste a moment, so his whining only added more distrust towards him. At that very second, the girl jumped down and he asked what she was doing here. Minnie explained that she was training to throw a spear. They were in the forest, anything could happen. Bride said he understood. It was worth hitting the monster with the spear and pulling the rope, and then Minnie would let the wounded one go. And the main character realized that it could be thrown a long distance. Then he waved his hands and said he would borrow her spear for a short time. The girl asked what he had in mind. He replied that this way they would not have to crawl through the entire forest in search of water. After that, he dug the spear into the ground with all his might. When it got stuck, he pulled it back out. Then he turned to the dragon and asked if it was real. She nodded in confirmation. After that, the main character said that this time it would definitely work and prepared to throw the spear again. Many asked if he was trying to survey more area for the search. They said there was land at the tip, and Undine could anger the water, but he explained that this way they would find the source faster. Bride said that at least they could rely on the dragon's strong sense of smell. The girl thought that only such a fool could come up with something like that. At that moment, Undine's eyes suddenly opened wide. He began to make loud sounds, and the main character understood. The water was flowing in a certain direction, which meant the source was approaching. They started moving in that direction. Many were surprised. During all that time, the monsters had not attacked them at all. Not that she was indifferent, but it turned out to be a bit creepy. To which the protagonist replied that he did not think they would dare to attack. The girl asked why he was so confident. Briggs said that he allows Undine to regularly mark her territory. That's why the little monster doesn't approach them. Moreover, he even took some of what was left with him, and Minnie said he shouldn't show it to her. He explained that the droppings of mighty dragons do not attract even a fly for several days, so they can be left behind and followed by the trail home. Life taught him, to survive you must use everything. During the Age of Dragonia, he was forced to serve in the army as a dragon lord, but one day he was left alone in the forest and he wandered there for several days. So many things happened to him. He replied that he had a hard time. Suddenly, they saw something ahead. Andin was impatiently waiting all the time. When they got closer, they realized there really was water there, but so little that it would not be possible to make even a river from this reservoir. Many said that admitting this was painful and that they had wasted time, and then advised to steam in the bathhouse and go home. But Brid thought, judging by the dragon's reaction, there is much more water here, so he refused. They looked ahead and saw a huge rock. The girl said that water slowly flows out of this rock. The main heroine guessed that it was because of it that this reservoir appeared here. Many asked what would happen if he moved it. Brid replied that he could try, and then tried to move it with his hands. He said it was useless. Then the girl replied that it had still moved a little. She said that he even left the imprint of his hand on her. The man at that moment thought as if this rock was leaning against a cliff. Of course, you can ask Undine to dive underwater, but while he is eating, you won't be able to reach him. After that, the main character fell face down into the water and decided he needed to cool off and soberly think over what they had done. The water was not very clean, but for some reason this place was exactly what attracted the Undines. Then he saw something below. There were plenty of stones and fallen leaves, and he finally understood. Something had really moved. It cannot be a pond. It is not made from my water. There should be no fish here. Then the main character saw a whole bunch of huge bubbles in the water. He immediately jumped to the surface and asked what was going on. There were many on the shore at that moment watching how Undine ate. She turned her head to the main character and saw the stranger was about to swallow him. She immediately called his name. The man quickly waved his arms, trying to break free from this monster. He saw huge teeth that were trying to grab him. The girl was in complete shock, utterly terrified. She loudly shouted the name of the main hero, who was still holding on in the water where the unknown monster was swimming. The man thought that the strength of his jaws was simply incredible. As soon as he relaxed even for a moment, he would definitely swallow it. He decided that it was a crusher. These monsters are terrible creatures that live in rivers and ponds, but the most terrible is the jaw. With one bite, it can crack a turtle's shell and several bones at once. The remains of the victim are left shredded like shavings. Crumbs ground into small pieces. This is exactly where the name comes from. The protagonist understood. The trash he noticed was not branches, but the bones of victims. He also realized that he himself was huge, even bigger than Andine. The boy thought that Minnie could ride Undine and swim to him, but he almost never listens to anyone except himself. Right now, he is only concerned about food. The main character realized one definitely cannot rely on help. He doubts he will live until the moment she arrives. Everything is completely bad. He won't last longer than a minute. As you recall, he had a similar case before. One tiger cub did not want to let him go so much that it bit through his glove until it bled in. No matter how hard he tried, it would not open its jaws. But at some point he sneezed and the fighting cat weakened the fight, but only for a moment. The experience of those days taught him, any opponent can be defeated if you take advantage of their fatigue. At that moment the protagonist found a way out. He climbed into the bag, took out some scraps and threw them into the crusher's mouth. Then a loud scream rises. Despite poor eyesight, the monster has an incredibly keen sense of smell and taste. It clearly feels uneasy about having swallowed such a product. So this is the main chance for the character to break free from there. The man thought everything was fine. He had almost broken free, but he couldn't breathe. The air was running out more and more. Time was running out. He wouldn't make it to the surface, and if he couldn't rise, he would go even deeper. After this, Brid decided to lift one of the boulders. He thought that sometimes air bubbles are trapped under the mass of stones. Now he could pull a little longer. Out of the corner of his eye, he noticed that the grinder was moving straight towards him. And then he decided to throw the slab he had just pulled from under the rubble into its mouth. After that, as if the protagonist suddenly gathered strength, he quickly moved towards the water surface. When he surfaced, he took a deep breath. The girl immediately called his name. She rushed to him and asked how he was. She was very scared. Minnie asked if the crusher really attacked him. She saw it only for a moment, the first time she had to see such a huge creature. The girl also explained that Undine did not move from her place. She tried, but all in vain. And the protagonist replied that now only the grass worries him. When the dragon shifted his gaze to the bread, all the food flew out of his mouth. He was surprised that the boy was injured. Many reached out for help, and he apologized to her and said that he could not even get up on his own. When their hands clasped, the crusher surfaced from the water. The protagonist already thought he had no strength to fight it, and at that moment the jaws were getting closer and closer. However, at that very moment, Undine approached them. Dragons are creatures that once ruled this continent. Their grandeur is so great that even the strongest wild creatures do not dare to move once they see them. Many said that Undine is incredible. The boy looked so small, but he had more strength than the giant himself. Brit explained, since ancient times, water dragons hunted splitters. Then the protagonist told her to watch. The Crusher literally recognized Undine as its master. The same one was sleeping right on the monster. Brit decided that he could use the power of this giant. He tied the huge shiny boulder with a rope and extended the other end to the Crusher. Many asked what he was thinking, and the hero explained, he wants to borrow the monster's strength. Brit smiled as he said that based on what he had seen, he was confident he could help them move this stone from its place. Many asked if he really gives orders to Undine and Crusher, so do they have such a hierarchy? Then the girl said again that she was convinced such crazy ideas could only appear in his head because of him. To this, he asked if that wasn't a wonderful idea. Many tried to argue with him, but then she simply agreed and said she would help them. Together, they grabbed the rope and began to pull. When they combined their efforts, they saw the stone moved. Putting in even more effort, they prayed that everything would work. A few moments later, the rock shifted and a fountain burst out of it. Many joyfully shouted that they had succeeded. Briggs said he hoped this water would be enough to carry the river to the city. The boy said that now all they had left was to cut the river. They would return to the city and he would call other dragons for help. At that moment, the girl asked if there was not too much water. And at that very moment, they looked back and saw an extraordinarily powerful stream of water was pouring from that hole. They were shocked. The water swept away everything in its path. The main character and the girl held onto its waves and floated. At that moment, Undine swam up to them. They immediately climbed onto his back. They immediately thanked him for the help. They said there was too much water. The pond was already overflowing. This was very bad. If it continued like this, the city would drown in water. Brid wondered if he had made everything worse. At that moment, a flying dragon appeared in the sky. It was Fiona, who said she had finally found the main character. He looked at her appearance in surprise. The girl asked them if they were the ones who caused all this chaos. Brit and Minnie were scared because they realized she was clearly furious. Braid fell to his knees and began to tremulously babble that he was very sorry. He had so confidently claimed he could make the river, but in the end caused a flood. He realized he did not deserve forgiveness. He was ready to pay for his deed with his life. They also began to insist that it was her fault. Supposedly, she should have stopped him. The main heroine did not want anything bad. She asked him not to lose himself. And at that very moment, Fiona laughed loudly. The princess said that she thinks she was misunderstood. She came to take them with her. The boys were stunned. The girl said that she wanted them to appreciate the fruits of what they had done. Later, they landed near the city. When the main character went out to see what was happening, he asked if they could really bring a river here. People were standing in the water trying to dig holes for the riverbed. Every city resident worked. Briggs said he didn't understand how they managed to cross the river safely. It was impossible. He thought the city was simply flooded. There had to be so much water there. Many said that those old men were digging something there. Then the men themselves assured. As soon as they left, everyone started preparing the trench. Thank God they managed to do it on time. The main character suddenly realized that he was inspired by the very possibility of the river's appearance, so he immediately began to prepare. Despite the unconfirmed information, as soon as he heard it, he immediately got down to business, and this surprised him greatly. Fiona said what she had almost forgotten to say, and it was she who organized the excavations. Brid asked her again, was it really her? Many asked the princess where she got such confidence in the main hero. He himself spoke about what would happen if he failed. Mrs. Fiona turned to them and asked very gently why she should not trust him. She explained that she recognized Brid. The protagonist said he was sincerely grateful to her for the trust, but her confidence still confused him, to which she replied, it's a trifle. Fiona said she expects even more significant achievements from him. Let him understand that himself. But the boy tried to argue and prove that he is just an ordinary dragoneer. Fiona ignored his words and declared that she expected even greater achievements from him. He understood. It was pointless to argue with her, so he said he would obey. Breed thought he was a bad person if he liked being controlled by a hot beauty. Many said he had a runny nose. He replied that he himself did not understand what was happening to him. After this, Princess Fiona interrupted their conversation and announced that they would celebrate the hero's return. At that moment, many people extended their hands to him. At that moment in Dragonia in the northern forest, the knights tried to catch the beast, but they just waved their hands thinly. It did not move from its place and did not hear them at all. The man began to insist that it was nonsense to use real monsters instead of dragons. People had long ago tried to tame dragons, but now they had taken to taming wild beasts. Sarah wondered if there was truly no way to make them obey her will. Only a few soldiers managed to saddle the monster Revan, if only briefly. Then she saw that someone was giving commands to the monster while it was trying to be saddled. The man managed to do it. He said that the saddle still needed to be installed, and then he turned to Sarah and asked her opinion on the matter. This was the fourth prince of Durgonia, Marco. He asked if he had done well. The girl answered affirmatively. There was little chance in the fight for the throne, so he joined the Order of Dragon Knights. The girl thought that he did not value her much. At that time, people supported him, shouting that he was really great that he managed to do it. After that, Marco leaned closer to the girl, took her by the chin, and said that he skillfully writes women on himself, then asked if she wanted to try. To which Sarah replied that he needed to watch his words. The man asked her not to be angry. He said he was joking. She could not love him. In her former homeland, there were no such vile people in power, if only they had not lost to these barbarians. At that moment, Marco shouted to everyone that he proposes to attack the neighboring village as a warm-up. In case of victory, all the women and alcohol will go to the knights. Everyone agreed with him, and the girl was stunned by his proposal. The men began to interrogate him about what they would do if soldiers discovered them, since the village belonged to a neighboring state. To this, he replied with a question: what do knights do in such a case? Marco sharply turned around and with an expression of anticipation on his face said that they will kill everyone, and that's all. At the same time, in Leviton, the main characters stood in the middle of the crowd. They were surrounded by a huge number of residents. They handed him various products. He asked why they wanted to give them to him. Many explained the farmers just wanted to thank him, and when people heard her words, they began to shout that she said everything correctly. For many years, they suffered from a lack of water, but thanks to him, the work in the fields will now be much easier. This year, none of them will go hungry. They thank Brid with all their hearts. The main character began to argue and insist that he had done nothing of the sort, but many interrupted him and said that it was strange to demand gratitude for one's work. Brid felt that although he managed to fulfill his false promise, his soul still somehow ached anxiously. The people did not stop and said that, as a sign of gratitude, they wanted to hold a banquet in his honor. He tried to explain that he had matters and work to attend to, but many insisted in response that she could take care of the dragons herself. The townspeople said they were eagerly awaiting Bread at the festival. The main character said the girl must save him. He cannot manage on his own. She replied that it would only benefit him to solve his problems himself. If he appears at the party, he will earn the respect of his sister Fiona. The main character immediately came to life, after which he said he would take her with him. As it turned out, he was talking about the red dragon Aphrodite, and she immediately appeared before everyone's eyes, as if out of thin air. The main heroine said that now she rides the hall on a big ball. He gave the order and she immediately obeyed it. The residents were amazed at how easily he manages to find common ground with dragons. He is truly a worthy trainer. Brit thought about what to name this little one. Aphrodite, daughter of the red dragon, whose relatives had an ancient connection with Barbaros himself. Delicate, more like a cat than a dragon. People began to say that it was a wonderful performance and then asked him to enjoy the food and drinks. He replied that he would gladly do so. He also said that the drinks were very tasty. The residents began to whisper that the main character was a good person. He remembered how he decided to drink as a sign of respect to the organizers, but eventually felt that just about now he was starting to get increasingly drunk. Then the girls approached him and continued pouring drinks for him. They began poking, saying his hands were so massive and pumped, and he replied that they were too close. They asked if he was against it. The girls asked him if he was not annoyed by being so popular, and then they started talking about how strong his hands were. The main character thought about what kind of man would refuse such company and could not imagine that she would make him so popular. At that moment, a loud roar sounded behind the girls. It turned out that it was Aphrodite. The girls asked what was happening to her, why she was looking at them so threateningly, and the boy explained. He said she was just a little jealous and apologized to them. At that very moment, the dragon turned away, offended. The protagonist thought, as soon as she starts sulking and muttering, talking to her is already pointless. The bride approached her and said not to be gloomy. As soon as they return, he will feed her to her heart's content, so there is no need to be angry. He decided that the alcohol hit his head too early. His head was not thinking at all. At that moment, he found himself riding Aphrodite and shouted to the others that he would return soon. Apologized for that. The girl said that it seemed he was popular not only with women but also with dragons. The dragon raced across the field like a madman, leaving behind dust and a trail that showed its trajectory. The rider sitting on the back begged Aphrodite to stop because he himself already felt unwell due to the mad speed. The young man looked back and suddenly understood. If he led the dragon to one place, she would probably calm down. He began showing her the way where and to which direction, and Aphrodite obediently followed the instructions. Suddenly the dragoness froze and looked at the place they had just reached with huge glassy eyes full of delight. It was a beautiful glade, a multitude of strange multicolored flowers, a forest in the distance, and petals swirling in the wind. The boy fearfully shrugged her off his shoulders, plucked a flower, then another, until he wove a beautiful wreath and called the dragoness closer to him. He ran his fingers along her neck and prepared to give her a small gift. He gave her a wreath and said that with it she would become a true beauty. Aphrodite grunted approvingly and accepted the gift. The dragon loves flowers. No matter how angry she gets, she will still weave her a wreath of beautiful flower sand immediately soften. When he set out with Minnie to search for the water source, he ended up in this clearing and remembered Aphrodite undoubtedly loved it here, and he was not mistaken. The dragon growled contentedly and the boy thanked her for the good mood. Then he said she looked much better and suggested returning to the party. Suddenly Aphrodite's eyes widened and she growled fiercely again. He grabbed the surprised boy by the sleeve and pulled him forcefully toward herself. He could not believe that the dragon still did not want to return there. Suddenly both turned around at the sound coming from the forest. The boy's eyes widened and recognized what it was. From the dense thickety forest emerged huge dragons, and on their backs sat people in night suits. Brid could not believe his eyes when he saw the dragon knights. He shouted what they were doing here but immediately realized it did not matter at all and they had to get out as quickly as possible. He jerked his dragon aside, ordered them to run fast but extremely quietly. But before they could, a sharp crack sounded and a terrible thunderclap roared. Smoke rose and the boy found himself right in front of the knights. They immediately recognized the boy ahead, the dragon trainer who had recently been dismissed, and they asked what he was doing here now. One approached him and said he did not expect to find him in such a place, then asked his name. His dragon came very close and roared loudly, and scorching heat burst from its huge nostrils. The man of rather impressive stature rose on his back, grimacing with a twisted expression of madness. Brid sharply exhaled in surprise. It turns out he came for his soul. Brid, trembling with fear, asks the man on the dragon who he is at all. To which he laughs and asks how one could not know him while living in their empire. The young man replies that he really does not know who he is because he devoted all his time to caring for dragons. This is His Highness Marco, the 4th Dragon Prince and the future commander of the Order of Knights and Dragons. Although he is from the royal family, his combat skills are beyond any praise, and he treats his subordinates well, quickly rising through the ranks of the order. Then the young man asks how such a respected person as the prince ended up here. His words hit precisely, shock from the reasons, and a wave of indignation rises among the subordinates. They explain. It was his will, and for such questions one could lose their head. The prince calmly replies that it is very simple. They are conducting an exercise to adapt these lizards to ride them instead of dragons. Brid does not understand what is being talked about and how the order is changed by lizards instead of dragons, because these monsters are wild, fierce, and never listen to people. The prince, standing on the back of his lizard and threateningly waving a sword, brazenly asks how much Brid should be impressed by having lost the gift of speech. The young man cautiously watches the prince's movements. He waves the spear in all directions, not understanding exactly where he is aiming. Suddenly, Marco throws the spear at the boy with all his might. The spear makes a circle like a boomerang and is about to hit Brid, but fortunately Aphrodite catches it and rescues him at the last moment. The prince smiles crookedly, implying that this boy can only run away. The young man says that they have perfectly adapted these creatures, but what exactly did he do with them if they decided to attack him? Suddenly, the prince, breaking into a shout, lifts the hair from the other side of his face, shows a scar, and asks if he really does not recognize him. At the moment when Brid was running with the dragons, he tried to stop them and got this scar. They did not shame him and cowardly left the battlefield. Behind the prince's back, they began to whisper that during the coach's escape he fell and hit a stone, and everyone decided that this is how the scar appeared. Marco says that he intends to finish off the young man because he is a traitor to his homeland. He is accused of treason, and if he brings his head to the empire, Marco will be honored as a hero and may even be promoted. Brute is in shock. He asks what exactly he is accused of treason for, as he does not understand what Marco wants. but if it is about stealing 100 dragons, it is strange that he was not held accountable for such a crime. It was said he must bring that young man back alive or dead, and whoever does it will receive glory and honor. Marco notices Aphrodite and says that his dragon is much braver than its master, after which he directs a spear at her. He adds that there is no need to worry, Brid will die after him. Covering himself with his hand from the flying arrows, the young man thinks. He only does not understand one thing: how they managed to tame the monsters. Monsters from the ancient world treat people with aggression and immediately attack as soon as they see them on the horizon. It would take years to tame them. It is unclear how they managed to achieve such a result. Mark, waving spears, says that it is worth admiring how they rebel, and it turned out it is that simple: just tame them with the fear of pain. Brid looks at him with a crazy smile. Marco says that even before all the dust was lifted from the dragons, nothing could be done with them, but this is expendable material, so you don't need to worry. Brid finally understood why he was so angry and ran away with all his might. He is a dragon trainer, a person who has devoted his entire life to them. Even when the monster was tamed, he, like any creature, wants to live. The young man cannot indifferently close his eyes to how they treat his life. Mad Prince asks, "What's the matter? Is he angry?" The prince suggested they see what he is really capable of. The lizards broke loose with a terrifying roar, and Aphrodite, trembling with fear, covered the bread with her body. The lizards looked strangely at each other, and the man sitting above began giving orders to hit faster, but the animals did not move. Then he asked what was going on. Marco called the lizard absolutely useless. It refused to move in any way and declared that since it did not obey, he would have to resort to other measures. The prince decided to deal with the trainer himself and declared that the young man would not be able to dodge the strike he was about to deliver. Approving shouts came from behind. The arrow flew past and hit the ground directly, getting stuck there. Marco was already delighted, but then there was a crunch and his joy immediately turned into confusion. The young man said it was true, he could not have dodged attacks like that, and it was not necessary, because that boy was holding the arrow that had just pierced his shoulder. He said he had a valuable lesson and named the principal directly by name, and the man fell into full rage, shouting that one could not speak to him so familiarly. When Brid jumped on the dragon and led it towards the enemy, the prince continued shouting that this was unacceptable. Some trainer dared to call him by his first name. The fight began with the dragons skillfully jumping from place to place, confusing the giant lizards. The prince himself exclaimed that it was impossible and how he managed to so masterfully take the dragon under control. Brid said that the prince definitely would not be able to defeat him in battle, that he could not reach him even with a spear from such a distance, and suddenly the weapon passed right in front of the prince's face. The young man's hand shot out and grabbed the very tip of the spear. This made the prince freeze, as he had never seen anything like it before. In a moment, the man was on the ground. His comrades grabbed him and, without wasting time, rushed away from there. They ran away, saying that they remember Brid, and he sighed with relief in response, calm and satisfied. Proud in solitude, he said it was too close, and if they hadn't found it within themselves, who knows what could have happened. Thanks to Aphrodite's jealousy, he was able to meet them. And what were the Imperial soldiers doing here, and did they really decide to attack Levantia? He decided that he needed to tell Mrs. Fiona about it as soon as possible, and in general, it would be good to return back. He turned to the dragoness sitting surrounded by lizards, and they all looked at her with tenderness. The man decided that Aphrodite deserved new admirers. Maybe they can't attack because they are afraid of her. He gently scratched the dragon's head and she licked his face with a satisfied snort. He said they needed to go and that her mating season had not yet begun, so, to the disappointment of monsters the size of giants, they returned to the city. What happened next took place in the castle in Levantia, in the women's office. She sighed and said that everything was clear to her. At the borders of her domains, Empire soldiers were noticed, and the girl asks what their purpose is. Brid looks puzzled. He honestly says his thoughts are somewhere else right now and he is not worried about it. He returns to Mrs. Fiona and asks if she likes cleaning, because the girl is sitting on a small couch in a room that looks like a huge storage. Books, paintings, papers, clothes, and other trash are scattered all over the room. She looks embarrassed and apologizes for him having to see this side of her. She cleans quite poorly, and then the young man says that he is not scolding her in any way. The lady says that her office is usually cleaner, and the boy replies that he believes her. Fiona keeps insisting that she will not be here today, so she had to deal with herself. Brit asks, "Who?" The lady explains she is talking about her maid. Then the guy asks again and gets the answer that she has to return very soon. The young man snorted in surprise and said that for the first time in a long while, he had to leaving that the lady had made a real mess. Suddenly another man appears on the doorstep with wild sounds and this frightens Brid. He asks who it is and the man greets him. He introduces herself, she is Vi. Full name is Vinya and she is the personal maid of the respected Lady Biona. Brid realizes with horror that he did not even notice when she came in and asks how she knows his name. The girl says that Mr. Brid used to be a brilliant coach who served the Dragon Empire and now he is tearing Leventia to pieces with hundreds of dragons. During his stay in these lands he mapped the river and helped many inhabitants, for which he received love and respect from them. He was even lucky he became popular among the girls of their land. The queen says she understands his surprise, but he is mistaken, she is not just a maid. This is a rare maid, a shinobi maid. The bride asks again, surprised. Disguise, surveillance, conspiracies, a maid hiding in the shadows. Her blood belongs to the descendants of true shinobi, and Vinya is not her real name. Brit read in books about shinobi, a special unit specializing in espionage, and did not believe they really existed. He asks, don't shinobi always have to try to remain unnoticed and look like it suits them? Venya tells Mr. Bridge that such shinobi exist only in literature and asks him not to confuse fantasy with real life. The lady explains that she found Venya alone at sea, nowhere to go, so she hired her as a maid. She dyed her luxurious black hair and got rid of the clothes from her native country so that no one could find her. The young man apologized and said he hadn't even thought about it. The maid immediately changed the subject, saying it was nothing serious and there was no need to worry, and she began to tell what she had just learned about the attackers. After the empire lost all its dragons, it strengthened border surveillance to keep neighboring countries under watch, and to compensate for the loss of dragons, knights began to use monsters instead of them. She turned to Mr. Bridge and said that she had just dealt with one of such squads. They had already managed to deploy monsters there. These monsters were forced to submit to pain, and she found several corpses of those sufferers near the enemy camp. The lady continued, now everything was clear. And yet she does not understand why it was necessary to tame monsters. They could have just bought new dragons, it's not such a big problem. The empire ruthlessly cuts expenses, and right now a wave of layoffs has swept through the service staff. Brit again mentally returned to the cuts to reduce expenses. He remembered how he was fired for the same reason, and now they hire amateurs for low wages. Fiona cannot believe that all this is just because of money. She asks how bad it is in the empire, and she is told, worse than anyone could imagine. They use any resources at their disposal, and their policy now relies on hiring more workers at a low price. The lady says their situation is miserable, mass riots and cuts in spending on everything possible. The maid agrees and adds that the country, cornered like this, has only one thing left to do. That is to start a war. Today they conducted military exercises on the borders, waiting for the reaction of neighboring countries, and if there was a chance to start a war, they also tested how the monster would behave in the field. The lady is certain that after full preparation they will begin the attack because she cannot close her eyes to it and says the decision has already been made. It is necessary to infiltrate the enemy garrison and carry out sabotage, hiding their involvement. She asks Vinya to do this. Sitting properly on her knees, the maid says she will do everything her mistress desires. Brid noticed just a minute ago the room was in complete disarray and chaos, and she cleaned everything up in an instant. Vinya also says she has one request for her lady. At the border, the army of the Dragon Empire where they were stationed was preparing a camp. People were setting up tents, carrying various goods, and simply talking among themselves. The girl who was watching the events through binoculars quietly giggled and disdainfully called them little soldiers. There are more than 100 soldiers here, and they are already building a fortress behind the tents. They will have to arrange sabotage in the Saracen, but both believe it will not be so easy. The man lying next to the girl asks her why she took him with her, since he is clearly not suitable for this job, and Vinya cheekily teases and asks why he thinks so. To infiltrate a garrison full of disgusting, stinking boars, clearly not a safe task when alone. Briggs said he didn't mind sneaking up to her secretly, but his face was already recognizable at full volume. The girl assured him it was not a problem, a little makeup and he would become a completely different person. With a single hand movement, she performed a miracle. The young man asked if it was some secret shinobi technique. It seemed to him that she had even changed his skull. The girl replied that she had long learned to transform them. The young man clearly stated what needed to be done: infiltrate the garrison and set off an explosion, but the girl interrupted him saying she would do everything herself. Then he asked what he should do, and Vinia said he had a very important mission waiting for him and asked him to turn his back to her. He jumped onto his back, and in a moment their bodies changed shape and they found themselves under some incredibly gigantic armor. Brid asked where she got that armor because only the deputy captain of the Empire wears it and asked whose blood was on the gauntlets. Brid replied that it was a secret. The boy thought her abilities were truly frightening, but in a critical situation he would have to ask her for help. Vinia said she was counting on him. He approached the black dragon Odin. This boy can be silent and emotionless, but there is no doubt about his combat strength. He is one of the most reliable dragons and stands out among others due to agility and speed. In the worst case, Odin will help them. As they began to get closer, the dragon suddenly disappeared. He incredibly skillfully hides his presence. Vinia exclaimed that he is just like a shinobi and that only a few dragons can hide so skillfully. Brid thought, to be honest, it wasn't him who trained him. The girl turned to Brid and said that ahead is an enemy lair and there is no way back. She asked if he was ready and he answered affirmatively. The dragon flapped its wings and they flew towards adventures. Vinia says that if something goes wrong, she will handle everything, and Mr. Brid's job is to behave naturally. She says that they look suspicious, so he needs to straighten up, but overall he holds himself steady both in this armor and in this plate. Brid explains that he has had to carry wounded dragons more than once, so this, supposedly, is not such a difficult task, and at that moment they come across soldiers. The man thought he should behave decently and naturally. But as soon as the soldiers saw him approaching, they raised their hands to their foreheads and saluted the deputy captain Brad because the man ordered them to keep barking in the same spirit. Vinia, who was sitting behind him, whispered in his ear, saying that he is holding up well and needs to focus. But as soon as she whispered in his ear, all concentration immediately fell apart. She says that their empire is truly an amazing place. The first thing that impressed her when she arrived here was the dragon mistress Fiona, although she is quite cold to living beings. But in their country there are no dragons, so their appearance still surprises her. Instead of dragons, there are raccoon-like dogs, and she is sure that Brid will be interested in talking with them. The guy still cannot understand the essence of that conversation. The girl continues to insist that she is afraid of dogs herself, so she asks not to let them near her, and the guy begins to get angry because she talks too much. He asks where he should go. The girl says they're deep into the fort. He needs to get a little closer to the wall and she will come out and plant the bomb. If the fortress is built, the next step for the Empire will be an attack on Levantia. For Mrs. Bean's sake, for all the inhabitants, they must stop them, and suddenly someone from the tower shouts that Vice Captain Brad is arriving. And the recruit Benya greets the Vice Captain and says he hopes to have training today. He really asks him for this, and Brid wonders how well they know each other. He apologizes and says he is busy now, and then suddenly others appear and say that if he wants to train with the Vice Colonel, then the next day. But Benilla replies that the boss is busy, and he is immediately asked the reason for the refusal. The crowd immediately decides that he refused Benilla so she would sleep with each of them 3 times, and Brid replies that he did not mean that. Then Benya says he understands everything, and adds how kind the deputy vice colonel is, offering to immediately go to the training ground. 2 from behind grabbed him and dragged him to the training ground. The girl said something bad happened to the little one. The boy asked and was surprised how she is so small. Eventually they pulled him to the shooting range, and he decided to give them a task to practice swinging the ball. He decided that while he is not busy, he might quietly slip away, but just as he was about to do it, he was called and asked how he could hide like that. Probably he has some remarks. This guy attracts too much attention. Brita caught that he thinks everything is fine. This caused a lot of questions from others. They started asking about the wrong leg or about the captain, but he did not give any advice during the entire training session. And before, he found faults in everything. Everyone thought that something could have happened, and Brid was terribly aware. Now he was suspected of something. A young man approached them and asked to fight with him. He asked if it annoyed him what they said about him, to which the young man replied that he didn't care what they said. Then he said that he just needed to fight him and show the vice captain's strength, and began to attack. Brid was shocked. This guy didn't listen to his commander at all and truly admired him. There was nothing to do. They had to fight. Suddenly, the girl sitting behind him used shinobi art. In a few minutes, the fight ended. He said it was impossible and deflected all his attacks. While everyone was in shock, the girl whispered to the boy in his ear that they needed to synchronize their breathing. In a few seconds, the fight ended with Brid's victory, and the girl said it was time to stop him and stop wasting time on him. And the man raised a sword to the neck of the young man who was kneeling and said that was all for today. Their fight became a real example for others. Everyone started talking about how cool the vice captain was, how he almost killed Bania, and it was no wonder he was their vice captain. Such a one deserves to lead the Imperial troops forward. Brid told the girl that she almost cut him, and Vinya asked what he was talking about because she just wanted to teach him manners, how not to behave like Bafitsa. She squeezed the boy even tighter and said it was a miracle how they got out without a single drop of blood. Brid agreed, it was really incredible. And Vinya said that now they would rest a little and then go plant the bomb. While Brid was resting, leaning against a tree, and Vinya went to plant the bomb, a girl in strange clothing approached the young man and said that she had just been looking for Commander Sir. The young man repeated her name again and realized she did not recognize him because of the disguise. She said that today they have an important meeting and that she hopes he has prepared all the necessary materials. The man asked again which meeting she was talking about. The woman asked what was wrong with his voice and if he had caught a cold. To this, the man replied that his throat had really hurt all day and immediately coughed demonstratively as if confirming his words. If they do not show up at the meeting, their leaders will not leave them alone, so they will have to be patient. He does not know what that meeting is about and what awaits him there, therefore his cover will be blown very quickly. The woman ordered him to quickly follow her, and he began to think in fragments about an excuse to escape. Nia disappeared to plant the bomb, and she needs to buy time. He began to persistently think about what topic might interest her, and suddenly an idea flashed in his head. He started his phrase with the words, "Commander, what do you think?" Brid immediately regretted having asked it all. She answered quite dryly that this decision is not subject to revision. She was sure that he knows that she had previous conflicts with their superiors and that she cannot disobey orders. Today's meeting will also include those who support this order, a gathering of amateurs ready to sell their thoughts for gold and receive approval from their elders. Their duty is to convince them of the error of this verdict, so she relies on his support. Brid sighed with relief, but Sarah still loved dragons and it was good that she still had feelings for them. He said he was glad as if she had not supported this idea, and he was afraid that she liked working with monsters. She turned around and walked on, squinting. What was he talking about? Of course, she preferred working with dragons. They were much stronger than monsters. Leventia would have huge problems if it were attacked. To weaken the Traconia army, maybe it was worth insisting that monsters be used in battle. At that moment, Brid realized he was completely confused. He added that he still believed monsters had their advantages. The girl asked what exactly advantages he was talking about. For example, lizards are very fast. If their potential is used correctly, they can be very useful, but they never tame the monsters. And dragons can move through any terrain, are strong-bodied and obedient. The young man replied that every creature can be used for everything. For example, dragons have their own character. They differ in both physical and mental abilities. Once trainers selected a dragon for each soldier to achieve the best interaction. She asked him if he remembered the dragon so timid that it could not even fight. It was Odin. Now Odin could be relied upon, but earlier, as soon as any soldier was put on him, he immediately started whining and at the first sign of danger retreated, categorically refusing to fight. The Empire wanted to get rid of him, but Brid tried to find out how to free him. Heightened caution is also a certain trait, and Bride wondered if such high vigilance could be used to Odin's advantage. Thus began the trials and errors during Odin's test training. He became one of the strongest dragons in the Empire and their partner. They wanted to abandon the strongest dragon because they couldn't find an approach to him the same as to other monsters. If you look at them from a different angle, you can see their advantages that can turn into strength. The girl thought about this, and suddenly explosions and wild rumbling sounded. The monsters broke out of their cages, and the fortress burst into flames. Bride decided that the plan succeeded and the plane managed, which meant it was time to retreat. The girl said she would check the cause of the fire, and the man went to the other soldiers himself to give orders. He ran in the opposite direction. Venia suddenly appeared somewhere from the side and said that it was good. Bride was glad to see Veniu and apologized for making him worry. He said that from now on he would prefer that she not leave him alone, and she apologized again, adding, "Thank you, everything went smoothly before, so the lady will definitely be satisfied with the result." Suddenly the guards noticed them, realized he was a stranger, and gave the order to kill him. Suddenly out of nowhere, Odin appeared. The girl smiled charmingly and ordered Mr. Bride to continue driving while she dealt with those soldiers. Vinia swung and prepared to strike. The young man asked if she was really sure about what she was doing, and the girl replied, "Don't forget that she is a shinobi, so she can handle a couple of soldiers." Then Bride, making sure the girl understood what she was doing, mounted the dragon and they dashed forward. The girl watched the youth who took off and said that this mission was still incredibly interesting, and if Mr. Brid could escape, it would become the easiest one. While the girl was distracted, someone on a horse rushed past her with a wild roar. Vinia realized with horror that he had managed to escape, but she was sure Mr. Brid would definitely be able to handle her. An unfamiliar girl who had just come very close to the young man said that it was indeed him. The young man asked again if he had not been touched by her yet. What exactly did the young lady say, that she recognized him immediately by his voice? She knows the faces of all her subordinates and soldiers. The man thought he was not under her direct command and was surprised how she managed to remember him. The girl added that Brit could not have known Odin's history, he had only recently joined their army. She said that instead of a fight she had a proposal for him. The young girl asked him to return with her to Draconia. He is an incredibly valuable asset for the Empire. He never complained about unfounded orders. He did everything that was required of him and was always in the right place at the right time. She wants him to return to her. The young man cannot believe that the commander really wants to bring him back to the Empire. She also added that if she had known in advance that they would want to release him, she would have done everything to prevent it. She promises that Levantia will not be attacked. If he goes with her, she will beg his superiors to promote him and treat him properly. If they refuse, she will protect him and he can stay with her. She had already hoped that she would manage to seduce him, but Brid forced him to refuse. She asked why, not understanding because these were the most ideal conditions for him given his position. The young man replied that he was pleased that the commander appreciated him, but all her words were ordinary promises. He repeated her words. She promises not to attack, will beg if he falls beside her, and will protect him in the Empire. Breaking such promises is the usual order of the day. He added Princess Fiona was different. She gave him everything immediately without any promises. He had nowhere to go, and she called him to herself despite the dissatisfaction of others. She kept him close. He swore an oath of loyalty and would not have betrayed her. Suddenly the girl laughed loudly, and this confused the young man. She said she had heard Princess Fiona is a great person, and it turns out the rumors about her are really true. The fiancé confirmed she is wonderful. The girl added that he himself is incredibly kind and impresses her by how hard he tries to explain to her the difference between her and Fiona. He asks what she should do while he talks about her. Brit began to say that he did not understand anything, but the girl snatched a sword from behind her back and ordered him not to play dumb. Compared to the noble princess, she is the commander of the Empire, and she will have to forcibly take him and her favorite Odin. The chase started. Brid asked what the commander was doing and why she was chasing him. She laughed and asked what kind of stupid questions those were. She deliberately intercepted him with her own powers. The young man asked her to stop and said that he had already said he is loyal to Lady Fiona and will never betray her. She was struck by how devoted he was to her, and she asked if he and the princess were really that close. Meanwhile, her weapon struck the ground and shattered the stone into tiny fragments. Red realized there was no other way. He had to run. He ordered that woman to surrender because he would never get his empire back. The girl said with a barely noticeable smile that she refused and could not accept such an answer. Then Brit understood there was no point in talking to her. He noticed the girl's movements looked suspicious, as if she was leading him somewhere, because the creature she was riding was jumping from side to side, not letting Odin deviate from the route. The young man leaned closer and said that he did not know the area very well, but Odin would definitely be able to help him. Then he explained it was time to turn on caution to avoid any dangerous zone. He realized that the girl would not stop. She kept shouting to him that his attempts were magical but at the same time annoying. And at that moment the boy approached closer and said, if they have nowhere to turn, then they must act. The dragon spread its wings. And it was then that the young man realized where she had led them. Dragons, although they seem slow, thanks to their wings can accelerate to incredible speeds. The girl assumed she would try to use the uneven terrain to shorten the distance. She believed that the only way to stop them was to block the path, but even in such rocky terrain she and Odin held up excellently. However, she advised them not to be too hasty in their delusions. Her hunt had just begun. She made a move and suddenly stones began to fall from the cliffs. It happened like this. Bride stopped seeing and had no other choice. Since a collision was unavoidable, he would try to do everything differently. The girl knows what he planned, but he cannot prevent the collision. Briggs said that the commander completely underestimated them. If the rockfall had started earlier, he would not have had time to give the command to Odin, but the left passage was blocked by stones, so they had to move straight ahead. But later it turned out, eventually they hit a dead end. The rockfall was just a trick, At first, the commander wanted to block their escape routes and lead them straight to the cliff. The girl said with pleasure that everything was going according to plan. She screamed that they needed to surrender, and the young man asked Odin what he was doing. He was not allowed to run away, he had to stop. Brid does not understand what exactly he is doing, because Odin has already flown very close to the cliff and is unlikely to be able to jump over it. And suddenly he realized what the dragon was about to do, and shouted at the top of his lungs for Odin to jump as quickly as possible. While the dragon was flying over the abyss, a thought flashed in the boy's mind: the end. However, the dragon landed exactly in the right place, saving both himself and the young man. The commander was baffled at how the dragon managed to jump at all. She did not understand how he even noticed the ledge. The dragon, thanks to his exceptional sense of smell, could detect even the slightest changes in the terrain. The girl was impressed by Odin's abilities and Brid's faith in dragons, so now she wanted to return them to the Empire even more. She turned to the lizard, asked why it was standing still, and ordered it to jump, saying, "A heavy dragon can jump over, but some monstrous lizard cannot." The young man felt all her hatred pressing from the cliff. No wonder Odin was able to jump over fear, a powerful driving force. As the commander decided, monsters obey only under extreme circumstances, and she said, today they were lucky, but her hunt was not over yet. This time they managed to escape, but she pointed her finger at Brid and ordered him to remember. The next time they meet, he will become hers. And then she turned the lizard and ran in the other direction. Brid fell to the ground with relief and said that they were saved and that it was very close. If Sarah had a dragon under her command instead of a demonic beast, he would not have been able to escape so easily. With Odin, they were really lucky. The last thing he thought was that he really did not want to see her again. Returning to the kingdom, everyone greeted Mr. Brid with joy. Everyone said how cool he was. He drove the imperial soldiers from their lands, and how awesome the black dragon was. He found it strange to accept awards, although he had done nothing. Vinyar ran up to him and said that a hero deserves to receive awards after achievements, and even though he tried to resist, she insisted that he was a hero. Still, Brid decided everything he did today is important for their future, and everyone loudly agreed with this. Mistress Fiona greeted Brid by saying that Fort Draconia was already completed, and they agreed with her, although they added, there are certain difficulties, but those are just details. Vinyar said that Mr. Brid proved that he is truly an outstanding dragon trainer. He builds the climax together with his partner and takes into account their distinctive traits when developing combat tactics. Among the negatives, she said she could only point to his low self-esteem, but the mistress hired a very useful ally. The maid added that she expected nothing less from her. Fiona said she understood that he was special as soon as she saw him. The maid said she has quite a taste in men, but her attitude towards Brid was a bit hard to understand. The way she holds him and speaks in ambiguous phrases makes one doubt her chastity. Shinobi added that the princess should not behave like that. The princess did not quite understand what her facial expression meant, so the girl explained. She only wanted to remind her that men are attracted to her innocence, not her debauchery. The princess suggested closing this topic and moving on to the next item on the agenda. The fortress was built in just a few days, and it turned out to be quite large. The Empire's capabilities are truly impressive. According to the Breed's report, the Empire has started using monsters instead of dragons. Mr. Breed just met such a representative. She was riding a lizard monster, and I think her name was Sarah. The princess asked if she was another talented representative from the Empire. She said that it was exactly what she needed, and she needed to think about how to lure such talents and maids to Leventia, and she unconditionally agreed with her. She added that this girl was also very beautiful and that she was a former boss of Briggs. She became so attached to him that she shouted. She wanted him to return with her to the Empire. While the maid was telling her story, she noticed that the princess was doubting. Just in time, at the border of the Empire, some man was shouting at Sarah that the fort was not yet completed. She agreed and said that Leventia had sent spies. They destroyed the fort from within. Unfortunately, she failed to catch the culprits, and she was very upset. The man said that this report was simply disgusting, and did she understand how much money and effort had been invested in this fortress? He asked how she intended to compensate for this loss. The girl said that she understood his anger and was ready to accept any punishment. A night princess from a country that the Empire defeated and took into servitude, and has long lived with bitter regret about her life. Then the king thundered that a mortal man would await her, but he was immediately interrupted by a man who had been standing in the shadows all this time. It was Marco, who spoke again about the death penalty and said that his father was very kind. The king sharply asked what his son was hinting at. He replied, "Killing her is too mild a punishment. Her death will not cover the expenses they invested in the fort." Then the king asked what he proposed. The answer was to take away her will. In the empire, if a person cannot pay a debt, they pay with their life. If deprived of all human rights and forced to work, she can repay this outrageously luxurious debt. Once she was a princess knight, she was taken as a trophy. Showing leniency and making her the commander of their army turned out to be a fatal mistake. King agreed. He appointed Marco the new army commander and her his servant. Prince thanked his father and said that now he was very happy. When the chain was already around his neck, Marco addressed the series and asked what she looked like. Then he realized that perhaps it was wrong to address her that way. He said that she keeps you in sight, and he never thought he would see her like this. He added that this world is so changeable, and the girl wondered what he was going to do with her. She said that in her opinion he would just put her in a cage, and he asked why, because that would be a waste of her potential. He is the fourth prince of the empire and he has no real right to the throne. He was given no education and entrusted with nothing. If things continue like this, he will not even be able to enter the struggle for the throne. With military knowledge and combat skills, they are capable of changing the course of the game, and now that she has nothing left, he offers her to dedicate her life to his success. He asked if she would help him. Meanwhile, in Levant, Brad was surprised that he was assigned a new task. The princess said that from that story about the fortress, it is already clear. Dragonia is preparing for war, and she believes it is time to unite the Arteria region. They set out for the north of the Levant and will try to secure the support of the Zib tribe. The Zig tribe lives in the mountains. Tribes and inhabitants undergo tough training there, and each of them has their own special technique for taming dragons. If they unite with them, the Empire will not be able to defeat them, but for this, Brid's help is needed. The young man does not mind, but he is tormented by doubts. He asked what the princess was doing. She replied that this time she would go with you and would need his strength as a guardian. The young man did not hide his surprise and said that the lady could rely on him. Benya asked why they could not be a little more frank. She began to imitate the princess and said that asking should not be so seriously and wildly, but softer and gentler. The princess asked Winnie to be silent for a while. Brit did not quite understand what exactly was being discussed, but when thoughts turned to the upcoming mission, the next stop promised a whole mountain of suitable dragons. And he began selecting dragons suitable for this task. It is reported that this is a dragon wolf named Dobble. Its nose can catch even the slightest hint of an approach, and its agility allows it to easily overcome the steepest terrain. They say this is the earth dragon Mineba. It looks like a mole, its element is earth, and it can break any block or mineral with its claws. The man also talks about a red dragon. His name is Barbaros. He is smart and useful in battle. He suggests taking him along. In a critical situation, he will help. Barbaros raised 3 dragons well adapted to mountainous terrain and wonders if that will be enough. The girl thinks that 3 dragons are too many. They might start attacking, and if they take even more, they will anger the Zig tribe, so she wants to avoid that. She explained that their goal is to form an alliance with the Zig tribe, and if they brought dragons, those might decide they are going to war against them. The man says that he is also going with them, so there is no need to worry about small things and leave everything to what the shinobi have done. Someone replied that they are counting on him. He calls everyone to the mountains. They noticed that the road looked abandoned and wondered if they were really on the right path, since they had not contacted the Zig tribe for a long time. The hero pondered. As an ordinary dragon trainer, he probably did not need to know all the details, but something else gnawed at him why they had not contacted the Zig tribe for so long. The maid asked if the suitcase was too heavy to carry and suggested giving it to the dragons. He replied that the dragons were already overloaded with other tasks, so he would handle it himself. She was surprised and asked if he was sure he could handle luggage weighing about 500 kgdream. He replied that he saw no problem and added that he was more worried about Mrs. Bayona. Brit asked if she was okay. Mistress Fiona replied that everything was fine, just a bit hot. He offered to carry his suitcases if she was tired and said that dragons could give him a ride. The girl asked for water. She splashed water on herself and immediately felt much better. The man said he was not as enduring as she was. Fiona replied that they must not stop and called Brit to follow her. The man said they had already covered half the way. The girl warned that it was quite narrow here and ordered to watch every step. The protagonist asked what happened and clarified why she stopped. The lady was pointing at something. She indicated that the passage was blocked by a stone and that it was a dead end. He exclaimed that he had brought Minaba exactly for such a case and ordered him to come out. Be aware but be ready to act. Mr. Spiona said that she knew earth dragons have strong claws and thanks to them they can dig even through stones. And she added that this boulder seemed too solid. She was worried that Minopus Klaus would break if he hit it. The man said not to worry. He showed protective iron gloves that he had made himself exactly for such cases and ordered Manhwa to get to work. Mind froze and the stone disappeared. Lady Fiona and the girl were stunned by the incredible strength, and the man asked if he hadn't broken his claws, calling him a good boy. The heroes are ready to continue the journey. The man thinks that for dinner today there will be curry and thanks Vinji for it. He can't wait to taste the food prepared by Mistress Fiona. The bride says that he and Dobble will go get firewood for now. The dragon senses something and the trainer understands what happened. The main character wonders in surprise if these are the inhabitants of the Zigs. And if before him is indeed a representative of the Ziggs tribe, then there is no point in attacking him after all. They came to make an alliance with them. Man says they will not attack and asks him to leave. Cloaked man says the intruders must be eliminated. The hero thinks it is a boy. Brit shouts to Dobble to call for help. The hooded man lunges at him. He says he does not want to fight. The opponent says he doesn't care and is determined to deal with him. The man exclaims in shock that he is not in the mood to talk at all. The girl says that, unfortunately for him, he will not be able to harm Mr. Brit. The maid says he fights well, but he is no match for the 10-fingered one. She attacks him and Fiona congratulates Vinya on her excellent work. The girl says now it remains to find out who is hiding under the mask. A fairy tale dragon appears. The main character notices in surprise. These are the same dragons that live with the Zig tribe. He says he sees them for the first time and they are so cute. Brid understands that this is a signal to retreat and says that he will run away with this child, but he will not let him do it. The enemy shouts for Cuchulainn to return and insists that he is not his master. He understands the boy's whistle with the flute most likely imitates the roar of a dragon. Small creatures have less developed minds than ordinary dragons. They are led by instincts, so it is easier to find an approach to them. He whistled the same sound, only in a louder tone. The enemy thinks that the man not only copied the whistle but also tamed Cuchulainn. He wonders who this old man is. Man in the hood shoots a poisonous needle. The bride is surprised. The veiled man says that he will go with him and that he will end his life there. The protagonist wakes up and asks where he is and what happened. Memory gradually clears. He thinks that this boy kidnapped him, but what will he do now? The enemy says that he is incredible. She explains that she followed him as soon as he entered the mountains and adds, because of the 3 dragons guarding him on the way, she could not get closer. The girl thought that the dragons would be distracted while he was preparing, but even then they sensed a foreign presence. The woman says that he is an incredibly powerful dragon knight. He can imitate the sound of the dragon flute and tames Cuchulainn. Brid replies that he is not a knight, he is a trainer. She does not understand who that is. He explains. He takes care of dragons and worries about them. She admires that he is too kind and that such talent is wasted because he would become the strongest warrior. The girl offers him to become part of their tribe. There he will be respected. She says that the Zig tribe generously rewards its warriors and in the future he might even become the head of the tribe. The main character introduces himself, Brid Starion, dragon trainer of the kingdom of Levantia. He finds the thought pleasant but declines the offer. He says he is proud of his work even if it is not very heroic. The man says that she likes him even more because of such words and adds that there are very few people who do not become arrogant because of their own strength and she respects him for that. The hero is surprised and thinks that he does not understand what is wrong with him. The woman says that he is worthy to become her husband. She says that she completely forgot to introduce herself. Her name is Ailu. Brid asks in surprise if she is a girl. Ailu replies that she is the daughter of the chief of the Zig tribe and her name is Ailu Zig. She laughs. She is often mistaken for a man, but she does not hold grudges. The girl says enough. From now on he will speak with the leader personally and she calls him to go. The main character thinks one could try to escape, but what is the point in that? He has no idea where he is or where the tribe's border ends. The man thinks it will be safer to wait until Lady Fiona and the others arrive, yet he still does not believe that they are leading him to a clash. Bride thinks that everyone around him is not too happy to see him and is about to fight. Ailu explains that this happened because she said he will become her husband because all the men in this tribe fight for this position. She says that the men competed to become the strongest and not only her fate was at stake, the future leadership as well. And she brought him and declared that she would marry only him, so now they are angry. Brit, shocked, asks, why are they angry at him? The girl says that they are tired of his strength being valued more than anyone else's and that he is the strongest man she has ever seen. She says that he is definitely her type. They have reached the place. Alu tells her father that she brought him. The bread looks scared. The chief says that Alu brought him here and he understands why, but many disagree with her decision. He says he understands everything perfectly, but the fact is, he was kidnapped and brought to their tribe. If they let him go, it would be even better. Someone shouts that he disagrees. The man introduces himself as Kuchai and says that he was the first suitor for Alu's hand and heart. And he adds that he will not allow a stranger who is not from their tribe to take her heart. Briet says that he did not intend that. The man asks why she called him strong and says that now he will test him. Kuchai strikes, but the protagonist stops him without problems and thinks, for a stranger, that's not bad. And asks how he is. Briet feels if this continues, he will crush him. Trainers are shocked by his strength. The man thinks that he did not want to introduce himself at all. He shouts that he is Brid Sterion, a dragon tamer from the kingdom of Laventia, and he has no intention of becoming the husband of Ilu and the leader of their tribe. Hero gets angry and asks if they still haven't calmed down. People are delighted. He smashed Kuchai with sheer force. They shout that Alu brought them a truly terrible man and his strength is like a mad dragon, and he did it all with one hand. The girl says it was a wonderful sparring and asks how strong one must be to declare their intentions. Alu insists only he is worthy to become their next chief and asks if anyone was listening to him. She assures him that he will definitely become a great leader and will even love it. Kuchai says he will take Ella from him and make her his wife. He thinks that this is not at all what he wanted. The man challenges him to another fight. Briggs says this is the 100th time he has challenged him to a duel. Someone asks him to calm down, calling him a fool, and shifts their gaze to the main character. The boy asks him to tell more about the dragons he tamed. In return, he will tell everything he knows about fairy dragons. Brit asks if he is not tired yet since he has been talking about it all night. Lyle replies, not at all. Zircon says that the protagonist will race him on dragons and asks to give way. Brid replies, they already had a race 2 hours, Aga, maybe that's enough. He says he already understands, dragons love him like no one else, and that he is the first one he has ever lost to in races. They tell him whom he must choose. They are the 3 great commanders of the Zig tribe. The trainer plans to teach them everything he knows so that the leader chooses one of them as his wife instead of him, Ayla. This way he can avoid his fate, and for Lady Fiona the negotiations will become much easier. Laos asks what fate is meant here. Girl asks him to forget about them and eat peacefully. He asks what she herself has prepared and says it looks incredibly delicious. She hopes he will like it. How can she let her future husband go hungry? And he adds that it is already clear she will become a wonderful wife. The protagonist reflects that the cuisine of the Zig tribe is unexpectedly diverse. There are many dishes. For example, stewed herbs with spicy butter and very hearty dishes. Brit especially loved the dark, bittersweet drink and wondered what it was made from. The hero says it doesn't matter how it was served to him, the main thing is that it's safe. Kuchai mumbles what he is whispering there and suggests fighting. Laos asks to tell them about dragons. Zircon says the dragons are already waiting, and it's time to start the race. Elu warns not to drink too much bread beverage. He says all right. The chief calls Elu and says that she brought a good person and that he believes. Previously there were disagreements among the 3 generals, but he even managed to unite them. His father believes that he is suitable for the role of successor and accepts him into his family. The chief replies that, however, he will have to pass the tribal test. Elu exclaims in surprise, this is madness. The father explains to him he is not a member of their tribe, he is a stranger. The man says that he cannot entrust him with the position of leader if he is not able to pass this trial. Brit asks where they are going because she suddenly led them into the forest and hopes that she will say, does she really intend to expel him from the clan so that he can escape? He thinks that probably not, but the people from the tribe also followed him. They reach the cave. The girl says that he must pass the tribal trial. The warrior asks if she is sure. The men say that Brit is not from their tribe, he does not have their blood, and he does not have a fade dragon. Sending him on this trial is unwise. Brit asks, what exactly? The trainer says that even for them passing these birth pangs is very difficult. He asks if she does not know, and she answers that she does. The girl says that her father insisted, Brid must pass this on. Ilu believes that he is capable of passing this on. They say that a strong person like the main hero is able to endure the trial, but the trainer still does not understand what they are babbling about. Alu says in this cave is the nest of the fairy dragon and he must bring an egg of the fairy dragon. That is the whole test. The hero is shocked. Brit is happy that he was so lucky and now he can see their nest. The main reason he did not want to leave the besieging tribe so quickly was that he wanted to learn more about Fey dragons. He believes that as a dragon trainer, his duty is to learn as much as possible about the different types of these creatures. That is exactly what the elders taught him, and he exclaims that it is wonderful. The man declares that he will go. Law says that his love for dragons is worthy of respect and that he is so fearless that he enters the cave when completely defenseless. Zircon says that he took such a difficult trial too easily and that he is a worthy opponent. The man asks the hero to go more carefully and faster. He notices that the cave walls are covered with luminous moss and it is quite bright inside. Brit asks Kochi if everything is all right. The man says yes, everything is all right. The hero replies, no, it is not all right. The warrior assures that he can manage on his own and asks the others to move on. The coach thinks that this sharp stone really fell right on poor Kucha's head. He sees a huge hole and doubts whether he can bypass it. In response, another warrior confidently declares that he will take everything upon himself and asks the girls to go first. Ailu moves, holding onto the rope, and says with relief that they managed to get across the gap. The protagonist admits it was terribly scary to look down. Zircon asks Laos to hurry and be careful, he is the last. He responds with indignation and asks if he thinks he is a fool. Brit is worried that they have lost someone again and fears what will happen next. The girl reassures him everything will be fine with Laos because he only caught on a stone and did not fall. Person burns so that everyone suffers. The man says he slipped and fell on his groin on the stones because he was walking first. The girl thinks he fell like a rider on a dragon. She calls it a terrible ordeal and says that only 2 out of 5 remain. The protagonist notes the others just accompanied him and did not want to take the test. Ayla says it's still too early to relax, the real difficulties lie ahead. Brit suddenly noticed something flickering. The girl thinks that those not related to them by blood will eventually feel their wrath, although she hoped he could avoid it. The man notices 2 creatures and asks if they are dragon fairies, small like Kushalane, only much bigger. He is troubled by the thought of why the elder dragon fairies perceive her as an enemy. The main heroine asks why they do not attack Ayla. She replies because she is blessed. She says that since childhood, members of her tribe drink filtered dragon fairy excrement, so the dragon fairies feel something familiar in them and do not see them as enemies. Brit clarifies that she means excrement. Ayla objects, no, it's not, that it is a sacred blessing granted to people. The hero replies that this does not change the essence of the matter. The trainer freezes when he realizes how the tribe tamed the fairy dragons, but he does not want to do the same. He finds out how it happened that everyone in the tribe has their own dragon. Girl tells the main hero that, by the way, he also drank it. He is shocked and does not believe that it was feces, especially since it tasted good. Brit also asks why he was not told right away that the bitter drink he had been drinking for several days was made from that. The man is in despair. He drank several cups of this drink and does not understand why the dragon riders still want to deal with him. The girl replies, they drink this drink daily from early childhood, it even changed their skin color. Ayla explains her skin has a different shade than the one she was born with and her body odor is not like that of an ordinary person. She offers him a nasal check, but Brit refuses. The hero thinks since he has a different skin color, he will forever remain their enemy. Ilu confirms, to pass he will have to climb up and defeat everyone. He is stunned and scared to death by the number of dragon fairies he will have to bite through. The man insists that without the dragon flute, taming the dragons will be difficult and he won't be able to proceed further. Ilu thinks that if Brit wants to become her husband, he needs to reach the very nest and says that the dragons have become fiercer than usual. But is he really going there? He says he came all the way here to see the dragon fairy's nest, and it would be shameful to leave empty-handed. The girl rejoices at his determination and declares that the feat he intends to achieve will be in their name. The hero ponders what to do because just climbing up is too dangerous. He notices something and seems to guess what exactly it is. He says that this will help him move forward. Brit realizes that these are their droppings and recalls. In the wild, animals recognize their own by scent, and dragons are no exception. He remembered how in the army his senior taught him a secret way to approach the dragon's nest without attracting attention. To prevent the dragons from tracking you, you had to give them the scent of your own body, and the most effective method was to smear it with dragon droppings. The girl sees this for the first time and finds it very clever. He laughs and asks if it isn't disgusting. Bret thinks that this way he can also reduce her sympathy for him. He says in surprise that this makes him even more manly in her eyes. The protagonist explains now that his scent has mixed with theirs, they don't know whether to attack or not. It all depends on how they perceive it. Brett decides this is his chance and goes all in. Ilu wishes him success. He assumes that the nest was built on this rock to protect the eggs from thieves, but climbing further with bare hands will be difficult, and he realizes there is no choice, he will have to show ingenuity. The man reaches the nest and freezes, admiring what he sees. The trainer was surprised why some eggs had already cracked. They are even bigger than the adults themselves, and some are completely broken. The hero understands that the dragon fairies were so fiercely dangerous because their eggs were eaten by rats. Britt feels sorry for the poor dragons and for the rats. Essentially, they have no choice. They somehow have to survive in these caves. But he believes that this is the law of nature, and as a human, he should not interfere. But first, he remembers that he is a dragon trainer, and his main duty is to protect them, so he cannot ignore this situation. The hero shouts to be heard, although he is far away, and hopes to get there in time. Ilu asks in surprise what is happening. Britt joyfully hugs the wolf dragon, calls him a good boy, and says she is grateful he did hit her whistle after all. She explains, wolf dragons have exceptional smell and sense, so they can find targets at distances up to 10 kilometers. The main hero apologizes for appearing so suddenly, but he has a task for him. He asks the dragon wolf to mark the territory above. The girl asks him why he asked this dragon to help with the nest. The man answers she will see now. The trainer explains, urine in the wild is a sign of occupied territory, and animals read information about the area by the smells around them. And now, when the stench of a strong beast is spread here, the rats have nowhere to go, they flee in fear for their own lives. Britt believes this is the best solution, although he feels sorry for these rats. They will have to look for food elsewhere. He is sure that as soon as the area is permeated with the smell of dragon smoke, weak animals will not approach the nest for several years. The warriors look at him with admiration and insist that he is a genius because no one had yet thought to use dung to sneak past fairy dragons and urine to drive rats out of their nest. They admit, against him they are powerless. The main character asks how they ended up here at all and sees the rope had been right in place all along. The man says there is only one last push left and that he needs to take the eggs and consider the test passed. The man says he will not do. Thish just wanted to see the nests up close. Ilu explains that since ancient times dragon fairies lay 2 eggs, one they keep and raise themselves and the other they give to the people of Zig. He notes even birds sometimes throw out weak eggs from the nest if they think they will not hatch. Britt understands the logic is simple and clear. Why bother with a hopeless egg when eggs develop differently? The coach notes the reason why dragon fairies lay only 2 eggs is much simpler. They do this so that if something happens to one egg, there is always a second one in reserve. He believes that this is the law of the wild world. The protagonist understands that this trait of dragon evolution actually gave the trait unique symbiotic relationships, so the dragon fairies do not mind if the Zig civilization takes 1 egg from them. Ilu persuades Britt to take the egg, explaining, if the dragon itself is ready to give you the egg, it is a sign of equal status. The man is confused because he actually wanted to fail this trial. He understands if he takes the egg now, he will be recognized as a less viance. The warriors encourage him, saying he will become a great leader and that they trust him with it. Britt is unhappy that they are not helping him. The girl asks if he would like to be her husband and adds that she is a wonderful hostess and knows how to give massages. Fiona appears and asks what is happening here. Mrs. Fiona asks what happened, and Vinya says that she is very angry. Britt has no idea what exactly he could have done to anger Mrs. Fiona. He was explained this is called jealousy because Mrs. Fiona was jealous of him with a beautiful girl, but they insist that it is nonsense. The protagonist realizes he was kidnapped, but he did not run away. Instead, he humbled himself and settled in the tribe doing his own thing. And Lady Fiona, he says, is maliciously irritated by his inaction, and he agreed with that. Now he is thinking about how to earn her forgiveness, and the warrior asks, haven't they returned yet? Vinya is impressed by his scale. Fiona requested an audience with the tribal chief. One of the girls said she would not give the dowry, so another, laughing, called her a joker. The chief was surprised by the fairy dragon's egg and said that it was worthy of his Ilu. He asked if the girls were friends of Brid's, since a strong man needs more girls. Mistress Fiona explained to the chief that they came here to meet him. The leader listened attentively. The girl introduces herself and says that she is the queen of Leventia. The man asks if she is the daughter of Ornis and admits that he longs for Leventia. Fiona confirms the chief was friends with her father. The wife wondered if her father was a close friend of the tribal chief and why then the ties with the tribe suddenly broke off. The woman says that she will get straight to the point. She explains that she wants to protect her home from the invasion of the Dragon Empire and needs their help. The chieftain firmly refuses. The protagonist stops in shock at the refusal, and the man explains, they have already fought with the Empire. The chieftain explains, long ago the Sieg tribe and the Kingdom of Levant formed a military alliance against the Draconia Empire. Eventually, they were brutally defeated, many fighters fell, but they did not surrender and were ready to continue the fight. However, Ornis surrendered to the enemy. The man says he was a warrior, ready to fight for his country to the last drop of blood, but before the formidable enemy he faltered and begged for mercy. The man still regrets that he once considered him his friend and again exclaims, Levantia seeks to unite to fight against the Empire. Fiona replies that it was thanks to her father's decision that she and the leader remained alive. She insists that they can decide. He behaved like a coward, but he made that decision because at the time he believed it was right. He was a warrior and at the same time a king who bore on his shoulders the lives of all his subjects. She added that he set aside his pride for the sake of saving everyone. The girl notes if he had continued this war, there would have been even more victims and perhaps they too would have died there. Fiona says she is proud of him. He was a wonderful person, a strong warrior, and a wise king. Now she stands at the head of the country. The man asks if they consider it cowardice after all he has done for them, and declares that now she is the ruler of Levantia and that her duty is to protect her people. She asks if the pride of the Zig tribe is too great to allow them to fight for their shared home when the Draconian Empire threatens all their lands. Chief calls her a girl. The main character realizes with amazement that he destroyed the house with one blow. The chiefess says she is not going to listen to him, and if she wants to be heard, she must show her determination. He displays the severed finger as proof of his resolve to become the leader. He says that words about what is right are worthless, and if she wants his tribe to risk their lives in war, she must show that she is also ready to sacrifice something. Queen of Levant, realizing what must be done, says the chasm between their countries is too deep and she expected refusal. She was surprised that they listened to her and even insisted on the conversation. Such a thing could not have appeared to her even in a dream. Fiona says she is ready for this, even if she has to lose a finger to gain their trust. The heroine asks if he really meant that he is going to lose a finger. The girl asks what he is doing. The woman says she just needs to discard the finger and that she does not understand why he stopped her. The bride, angry, asks, "What were you thinking? Didn't your parents teach you to take care of yourself?" The queen replies, "I am a princess and ready to sacrifice myself for my country." Coach says that these are just hands and does not tell the whole story. He says that these hands are not meant for that. He believes this proves she does not value herself and asks if she really needs to cripple herself to prove something to someone. He also says she is a princess, a symbol of the country, so she should have thought about what people would say about her actions. The bride says that if she harms herself, it will spoil the country's prestige, and she must not do it again. The protagonist, apologizing, said that his proposal was unacceptable, and adds, if the finger really wants it, let it take it. Everyone is amazed at what the dragons are doing here. Vinia is surprised to hear the names of the dragons. He says that Fiona accepted him, a loser who had nothing gained for the sake of her kingdom. He is ready to do anything. He asks them to accept her proposal. Everyone was surprised. The dragons bowed their heads before them. The chief laughs and says, people who live near dragons see them for the first time. They are ready to bow their heads before someone, and he believes that she showed him her determination. She insists that even such a strong man is ready to follow her, and that proves something. The man declares that he is ready to enter into an alliance with her state again. She asks again, surprised, is it really true? He confirms and admits frankly he had already thought of making Brid the next leader, but after such words he no longer considers it possible. The chief warns her not to relax, and if he feels she is about to give up, he will pay with more than one finger. She swears she will not let him down, and if he doubts, let him take her life. Everyone celebrates the union. Inya says that they even have seafood in the mountains and calls oysters beautiful. Alu explains that these are not seafood but rock oysters, stone oysters that live on rocks. The maid notes they taste like ordinary oysters. Girl asks where these two are. The protagonist believes that the diplomatic expedition was successful and thinks that Fiona is still angry at him. He suggests going to the others since the evening is not over yet. He thinks that. Brit asks her why, and she replies that her character is straightforward, and although her appearance is one thing, sometimes she behaves sharply and completely thoughtlessly. Girl admits that at that moment she still did not fully realize what she was doing. The hero notes this is not the first time she behaves strangely. Even during the first meeting she spoke strange thoughts, and this is very surprising because before he always saw her as calm and prudent. She says that she could not hold back her feelings, especially considering that this time he was involved in everything again. Fiona wonders why men do such foolish things. She believes that he promised to be with her forever. Britt thinks, even though he does not hear what she whispers, he thinks she is scolding him. Girl is grateful to him for stopping her. Princess says that if her emotions take over her again, she wants him to be nearby to stop her. Braid laughs and says he thought she is angry at him because he calmed her down. The girl replies that without him she would have been in big trouble then, and the hero adds as if he can scold her all the time. He says he is glad he managed to stop her, because if her hands had been injured it would have been bad. The girl thinks that it was because of her he suffered. The coach says, a scar is a badge of honor for men, not for women. She says it does not matter. Brett notices that she was aiming at the ring finger and asks her not to be so careless. Fiona takes his hand and says that the day will come and does not finish the sentence. Princess adds that this ring will belong to him on the ring finger. The man is shocked, asks what she said, and thinks it is another bad joke. The girl suggests dancing so as not to sit here. Brett is surprised and asks what he should dance with her. The man rejoices at the incredible amount of wealth and wonders how much they have brought him, then adds, with them Jerigonia will reach a new level. The man says that, as befits his dear son, the second prince of Balbinas, the young man smiles and replies to his father that he does not deserve praise.